We are waiting on two commissioners. One commissioner I know is 5 minutes away. Okay. We have a quorum. Eleanor, do you want to go ahead and take roll call?
Sure.
Thank you.
Jenny West, present. Jason King, absent. Stephanie Bruno, present. Donna Wakeman, present. Annie Clark, present. Lee Bressler, present. Greg Hackenberg, present. Io Love, present. Jennifer Green, present. Heather Sapari, absent. Ann Red, absent. We have 8 members constituting a quorum.
Good afternoon, and thank you for attending the HDLC Commission meeting of March 1st, 2023. We would like to thank you for attending and appreciate your cooperation and support. The HDLC is located in City Hall on the 7th floor at the city's one-stop shop. Our mission is to safeguard the heritage of the city of New Orleans by preserving and regulating historic landmarks and districts which reflect elements of its cultural, social, economic, political, and architectural history. The full HDLC mission statement can be found online. The HDLC has written guidelines that outline our policies and procedures. They are available on the city's website. Please determine if your property is in an HDLC district or if your property is an HDLC landmark before beginning work or repairs on the property. If the work or repairs are visible from the public right-of-way, the work requires a certificate from the HDLC, which is known as a certificate of appropriateness or a C of A. You must get a C of A prior to beginning work. Once a C of A is issued, changes must be approved before work can commence on the changes. If you have any questions about our policies or procedures, we have a highly qualified staff ready to assist you. Please pay attention to the following meeting rules. 1, if you plan on speaking and are not the applicant, you must fill out a speaker's card. These are green. They're located on the table over here, and hand it to the staff prior to the meeting. 2, all speakers must state their name and address for the record. Our meetings are recorded and televised. 3, there is a 2-minute speaking time limit. 4, please turn all cell phones off or on vibrate. Phone conversations should be conducted outside of this room. And 5, if your application is denied or there is a no action vote, you have 10 calendar days from the date of this meeting to appeal to City Council in writing. The staff will furnish you with the details of the appeals process. Thank you. I can tell that we've turned up the mic since our last meeting, which is greatly appreciated to everyone as well. So with that, we'll move on. So we've completed roll call. Item 2, minutes of the February 1st.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Wonderful. Commissioner Bressler, Commissioner Hackenberg seconds. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Item 3, remove landmark nomination of 2501 Bank Street. The staff will make their presentation.
This is a proposal to remove the landmark nomination from 2501 Bank Street. This property had been cited for demolition by neglect as well as by code enforcement. Unfortunately, a fire destroyed the rear portion of the building and the city declared it in imminent danger of collapse and the building was demolished. This is now a vacant site, and as is routine, we remove the landmark nominations from sites where the building no longer remains. So this is more of a paperwork issue. Of course, we're all very distressed. This very important property did not survive, and it's a reminder to all of us to continue to maintain and protect and treasure our shared cultural history.
Thank you. This is very sad that this one, that we did lose this one, but understand the process for removing the nomination. Thank you. Item 4, consent.
Take action.
We need a motion, a second, and
Okay.
a vote.
Oh, thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the removal.
Commissioner Bressler makes the motion. Commissioner Hackenberg seconds. We need 2 seconds or 1 second?
Just one.
Just one.
And
Okay.
then a vote.
Okay, great. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Item 4, consent agenda. Item A is 2921-2923 St. Thomas Street. Item B is 1463 Henriette DeLille. Item C is 1133 North Villery Street. Item D, 1022 Arata Street. Item E, 5337 Charter Street. Item F, 634 Lessups. Item G, 1206 Magazine Street. Item H, 3014 St. Claude Avenue. Item I, 2313 Laurel Street, item J, 1225 Carolac. Item J, and then item K is 1729 Britannia Street. I need to recuse myself from item H, 3014 St. Claude Avenue. I'm gonna look, my vice chair is not here. Commissioner,
But can't vote if you recuse yourself, right?
We-
I think at this point, we should probably move on to other business. So
Okay.
that we can approve the consent agenda once we
we can do that.
have
That's
you
fine.
present.
The other option is we can, yeah, that's fine. We'll hold on consent agenda for now. I'm assuming I do not have to reread the consent agenda into the,
I don't think so.
I don't believe there's any, we can call for public comment, or is there any public comment on the consent agenda? I don't have any comment cards on the consent agenda either over here. Okay, so with that, we're just going to hold this item because we do not have enough votes, because I'm recusing myself on one of the items, just to the audience, so you're aware. So we'll come back to this one. Item 5, old business, new work applications, item A, 1517-1519 Uterp Street. This item has been withdrawn.
The retention is still going through.
Oh, we are?
Demolition
Okay,
application has been withdrawn.
thank you. We have a second chance to go back to the consent agenda, so let's do that, and then we'll come back to this item. Alex, if you're okay, just hang tight 1 second. Hello. It's okay. It's a tricky day because I'm recusing myself from an item, so we were waiting for you. It's all good. Okay, so consent agenda. Welcome, Commissioner King. I'll let you get settled for just a second. So consent agenda, we went through the items. I need to recuse myself from item H. And I will ask that you call for, I guess, do we have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. Commissioner Green seconds. Commissioner King, can you just ask all those in favor?
All those in favor? All those in favor? Thank you.
Sorry, I have to recuse myself.
All those opposed, the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. All right, onwards. Thank you so much, Commissioner King. Item 5, old business, work applications, item A, 1517, 1519 Uterp Street. A portion of this has been withdrawn, this application. So the applicant, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Alexander Adamick. Our office is 1139 Aretha Castle Haley Boulevard.
Thank you. The staff will make their presentation over here, comments following.
This is an application for the retention of the demolition of enclosed water closet portions of the balconies, and also the removal of the original wood windows and installation of vinyl windows, and the removal of window cornices. This was heard a few months ago and had a 60-day deferral. I'm not going to go through the whole history since most of you are here. And that's it.
The deferral was,
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
what was supposed to happen in those 60 days?
The deferral was to give time. There was the possibility of the sale of the property, which was not disclosed at the meeting. But also to see if the current previous ownership now wanted to essentially actually retain these items. So that was the reason. The properties have since sold and are under new ownership.
Thank you. So the applicant, do you wish to address the commission?
Yes, so the buildings were sold. Actually, all the ones we discussed last meeting were all sold at once to new ownership. So it's 5 buildings were transferred on Uterp Street. This building, I hadn't walked through it. The owners actually, the new owners had never walked through this building prior until after the sale. The sale was on January 28th. I hadn't walked through the property for 4 years prior to that myself, even though I had been working on the project. My recollection of the building was that it was in poor condition. You know, we kind of immediately moved to actually looking at demolition for it, but then withdrew that demolition application because when we did walk through it, we realized that the bones of the building are in relatively good condition. At this point in time, the owners have dumpsters on site and they're just clearing debris from the house. So there's, you know, needles and mattresses and garbage, pretty quite a bit of it, to better kind of be able to assess the structure, and allow people to, and engineers, contractors, and myself to like kind of safely walk through it, because it was rather like you couldn't walk through the entire structure at this time just because of the shape that it's in. But the goal is to bring the building back into commerce. Unfortunately, one of the owners was the new owners was supposed to come today, but texted me right before the meeting and said he had something where he had an emergency where he couldn't attend. So that's unfortunate. But at this point, we were kind of discussing it yesterday of like what their goals are. And because this is all happening so rapidly, and there's, the 5 buildings and that just transferred. And again, that offer was made, I think, early January and closed on January 28th. They're still kind of trying to wrap their heads around how they're going to move forward with the development of the 5 properties, although of course they're going to redevelop it. In terms of the violations on the building, it's their intent to, bring these buildings back into commerce and make them nice. So to that end, I don't think they have really any concerns about replacing the windows. I think they're more concerned about the timelines of the replacement of these items and when they would have to actually start the work on it. So again, like, I think that if we could ask for more time, we would love that right now, just so that we can better assess the situation once, all of the trash has been removed from the buildings. And, the plan is to secure the buildings, which is something that I think we were looking at in the violations. And, but I think, yeah, if we could do another deferral for just a little bit, that would be really helpful at this point in time. And I'd be open to just discussing how to best move forward with the project.
Great. So I'm going to look back to the staff for, there's 3 items on this project. The first item, they're requesting the deferral, or that item has been withdrawn for the next meeting, the demolition of the elevation of the balconies and enclosed porches.
So a deferral on that one.
A deferral on that item, and then the other 2 items we're hearing today. Forgive me, I'm just sat over and talked to Commissioner King for a second when he came in.
Okay. So the part that was pulled and withdrawn was demolition to grade.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
That's
And
fine.
so
So all 3 of these items
These
are.
3
being
items
heard
are
today.
still active.
Okay, sorry, just making sure I prepared in advance of the meeting and just making sure my notes are consistent with that. Okay, great. So the items that we're reviewing, luckily, Alex, they're, again, HDLC's purview is from the exterior of the building. A number of these items are from the exterior. We understand the owner is clearing the buildings and looking at those as well. So the 3 items that are in front of us today, just to reiterate for the commissioners, are demolition of the elevation of the balconies and the enclosed portions of those, and the staff is recommending retention of the demolition of the enclosed water closet portions of the balconies and denial for the rear side elevation balconies. Item 2 is removal of the wood window and installation of vinyl windows. The staff is recommending retention of the installed vinyl windows with the proviso that most of the rear side elevation balcony, or that hold on. Staff is recommending the approval of retention of the inappropriate vinyl windows of the staff, even though with the proviso that the rear side elevation balconies are reconstructed to match the existing condition. Can you state, is that just because the visibility of those windows is less, given that the balconies are there? All right, that's what got me for a second there.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And then item 3 is that the removal of the cornices above the windows, and the staff is recommending denial of the retention and installation of the cornices to match existing. I guess to the applicant, these all seem very reasonable in terms of staff recommendations. Is there anything?
It's just that at this point in time, I don't think they understand how it's all gonna, in terms of a schedule, be started, right? So I think the concern that I heard from the new ownership is not that, like, they want to put in new windows. However, they're going to completely renovate the structure, which means, working on the foundation, repairing the sills, that's going to pop and crack everything. There's water intrusion. I did walk through the structure since the last meeting. There's water intrusion throughout like a lot of the walls because the roof is in failure. So again, like replacing windows right now before the entire building is addressed, I think is problematic.
I'm going to let the staff speak to the how long you have to correct these items. Often when we have retention applications, which we'll see further along in the agenda. And we do, put a timeline on it or an extension, a 6-month period, a 1 month, a 1 year. It's very difficult for the staff and everyone to follow up on those items for that time period. So I don't necessarily see it again because they're moving forward with progress to renovate these buildings and they desperately need it.
Yeah, they do.
That we would provide kind of an additional time on the motion, but I'll let the staff speak to what's standard on this.
I don't have the violation notices in front of me to know exactly what the timeline is stated, but typically when there's demolition by neglect, there is a certain amount of time for them to get a permit. And then I believe it's 90 days for the work to be completed. We often extend that time period because we understand that it's difficult to get contractors, et cetera. But if applications are submitted within that time frame, permits are issued, it's an indication that they're moving in good faith. My recommendation would be that the client of the applicant submit these applications to get permits to address these issues instead of kicking it down the road indefinitely. So that way we're at least working with them towards a resolution. And you're correct, it's easier for us to monitor it that way instead of just saying, well, they're going to do a roof, so we might as well do it all at one time, et cetera.
Correct. That's when we've had projects where either they haven't remedied it or we have another issue where something's gotten removed and it comes back to commission. So I think given that this is in the Lower Garden District. We do not have a commissioner present from that district right now. Is there a commissioner who wants to make a motion? Or let me call, is there any additional public comment on this application? Sure, absolutely. Step forward and state your name and address for the record.
Matt Ryan. I live at 1017 Uterp, and I'm the vice president of the Lower Garden District Association. We used to be the Coliseum Square Association. And we fully support the staff's recommendations on this. This house needs all the help it can get, and the staff looked at it, I think, very wisely, and their opinion is, we think, straight on. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Can I just make one more comment?
Yes,
I think that we would happily, replace all of the windows if we could retain the demolition of the rear balcony, which I think probably would be addressed and replaced at a future point in time. But as like the development plans haven't been done at this time, I think it's just something that clients would be uncomfortable with if they were here and would be talking about with you right now.
have you reviewed that with the staff at all
I think,
prior to this? Just,
oh no, I think previously, yeah, with the staff under previous ownership, the staff definitely wanted the balcony to come back in, be replaced. But again, I'm just here to represent my clients and what I think their best interests would be.
understood. I'm just looking to see if we have a photo of, we don't have a Google image or anything looking back in time that's in the staff report in terms of what that original balcony.
There is a picture in the report.
The issue with the rear balcony too is that, the windows that are there at the rear balcony don't provide access to the rear balcony. They're all have a sill of 36 inches. So it's kind of odd to put a balcony back that's not really accessible.
And it's this image, the 2011 photo showing the rear water closet and covered balcony. Apologies. I mean, it does seem like it's part of the character of this originally is to put this back. And again, we're reviewing kind of with recommendations of the staff. I can't make a motion on this one. Again, we don't have a commissioner from the Lower Garden District. Is there another?
If you could make one, what would it be? Hypothetical.
I mean, on this one, we heard this one, we've reviewed several of these projects. This particular project we discussed and then deferred. I mean, on this one, it just seems like these buildings are in need of repair. They've been neglected for a long time. I do realize you're under new ownership. But again, the recommendations of the staff, if I was to make a motion, would be to stand, which would be to put the balcony back and allow for retention of the vinyl windows. If the owner is willing to come back and replace with historic wood windows or wants to amend or change this down the road and come back with an application towards that. I mean, I think at the end of the day, these are coming in front of us as well because they've been neglected and are called out with violations. So it's, we need to move these forward.
I had a question, then I can make a motion, but just on the timing issue that the staff was talking about, can you go over that to see how that would work? Because, starting the permit process buys them some time, but it moves the process ahead and puts it on your radar.
Sure. And it keeps it from being too open-ended too, to
Right.
where, I mean, I'm
But at what
concerned
point
about-
does it become a deadline?
Well, let's say, like I said, I don't have the violation notices in front of me, so I don't know exactly where we are in that timeline, but let's just say we're at the position where they needed to have an application in within 14 days.
Okay,
And then from that point, we would have 90 days for them to complete the work, or at least have commenced with work in good faith to where we could revisit it and extend the length of that permit. So
does that time make sense to you, or?
Unfortunately, it doesn't, because again, this entire structure would be redesigned and like redeveloped, and just the architecture process alone is more than 90 days. The building would need to be measured,
I mean, understood, but there's
It's
also,
I understand. I'm just telling you, like,
Well, I guess the staff has a
if I'm
timeline.
being
You have a
forthright with you,
timeline.
no, it's not an adequate amount of time to necessarily address it, but we could certainly open permits in that time and show them that we are moving forward in good faith.
and since this is coming to the commission is in a position to make a timeline other than the 90 days. This is a recommendation of, I would definitely be comfortable with an extension, provided that they had a requirement to fill out an application and get a permit within a set amount of time, instead of it being something that's deferred indefinitely.
Does that make sense?
That's reasonable. Yeah, thank you.
So I guess the motion,
Commissioner Bressler, do you have a motion you want to put forward?
I'm trying to sort of rephrase what the staff just said, that we would approve the staff recommendations and start the process for permitting within the 90 days. Is that what you're suggesting?
That sounds reasonable, that they should at least, I would say, why don't we say they have to apply within 14 days and they have to get permitting within 90 days? Would that work? Because I think 90 days for them to draft plans to address the violations
That's plenty of time for
is
this.
generous.
Yeah, that is very generous.
That's the timeline then. So approve the staff recommendation on the work that needs to be done and have the 14-day and the 90-day periods that we just talked about.
Okay, so just to clarify, so on the 3 items for the demolition of the side, you're making a motion to allow for the retention of the demolition of the water closet and the portion of the balconies, and a portion of the I'm sorry, there's a water closet and balcony right there if you see in the photo. Retention of demolition, enclosed water closet, portion of the balconies, and denial for rear side elevation balconies. Item 2 is a motion to accept the retention of the installed vinyl windows with the proviso that most rear side elevation balconies are reconstructed. And the third portion of this motion is the denial of the retention and installation of the cornices to match existing. And the applicant will have 14 days to submit a permit to correct these items and 90 days to pull a building permit.
That's exactly what I said.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Wakeman seconds. Is there any additional public comment on this application? All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you and good luck with your project. All right. Moving on, new business work applications. Item A, 1200 Independence Street. Is the applicant present? Hi, please step forward and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, commissioners. My name is Lawrence Mason III. I am the owner along with my wife, Danielle Mason. This is our first
Oh,
home.
just state your name and address for the record. The staff will make their presentation and
Oh,
we'll hear
sorry
your
about that.
comments after.
Sorry
Thank
about
you.
that. I was ready.
Yeah.
Lawrence Mason III,
Just stay right there. You're not doing, yeah, you got it.
1200 Independence Street.
Thank you.
This is an application for installation of visually prominent roof-mounted solar equipment at a contributing rated 1-story single-family residential building in full control by water. 1200 Independence is a circa 1900 frame double shotgun residential building with reserved exterior detailing. Proposal to install roof-mounted solar collector equipment at the left side roof slope was applied for. Per the HDLC guidelines for roof mounted equipment, visually prominent equipment should be located on non-street facing roof slopes. And due to the heightened visibility of the proposed arrangement, staff recommends denial of the proposed configuration and that the solar equipment be instead installed on the right side roof slope.
Thank you. To the applicant, do you wish to address the commission?
Yes. I know my wife and I, we can't necessarily speak to the specs of it, but what we can speak to is kind of the values of first time homeowners. And of course, we don't want to introduce additional conversations around utilities and those payments there. But from the conversations that we did have with the representatives, they recommended based on the sun and the way and the amount of sunlight that side of the house, the street side of the house gets on Murray Street, that would be the most efficient and effective for solar, which would both benefit this household and of course the grid if there are days where we overproduce energy. So that is the, I guess, good faith in which we are operating with and kind of the recommendations we are following.
Thank you. Did the solar company also advise you, this is a historic house?
Sure.
The solar companies we hear them all the time. We have a number on this agenda. And they are used to working in the historic districts. Did they advise you that even though they were recommending most production on the side, that it was a side that most likely would not be recommended by staff, given how visible it is?
Although they didn't, I certainly am a native New Orleanian and certainly care about the fabric of the city and some of the character that we are trying to uphold and protect here. So no, he did not address it specifically, but I certainly was aware of it and thought it was worth having the conversation and seeing if there was some way we could work with this.
So we see a number of these applications, and generally the HDLC is fully supportive of solar. We just like to see them on less visible facades, especially when they're on corner properties. And so given this one, I do realize you have both sides are visible, but it seems like we would be able to look at it on the other side of the roof. Was that, I guess, to the staff, was that ever considered or discussed with the applicant?
I'm not sure if that ever came up, but it would definitely be something at the staff level that we could approve
Right.
because it's on the interior. So it wouldn't have to come back to the commission for.
Okay. Yeah, and I think in this case, it's very visible from the corner. And really all directions from the photos. This is my district. Although I cannot make a motion on this one either. I do want to see if there's any public comment on this application. No public comment. Are there any other commissioners with thoughts on this one? Commissioner Hackenberg, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, we have, I don't think ever approved a street facing solar
It's
panel array on a one-story structure that's so highly visible.
yeah, I don't think we have either, at least at the time I've been on commission.
And I will go ahead and make a motion to deny the request.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a commission that wants to second that motion?
I'll second.
Commissioner Bressler seconds. Any other comment with commissioners?
I just wanted to commend the applicant for the attractiveness of the house. I mean, and it's a definite asset. But to second what the other commissioners have said, it's so highly visible on the street side. And we absolutely have never approved. So.
Thank
I
you.
guess
Thank you,
question for-
Commissioner Wakeman.
Yeah, question for the applicant. I mean, we're really discussing which side of the roof. So it sounds like the other
I'm
side.
gonna
of the roof-
call Commissioner Bressler. I'm gonna call rules. We have a motion on the floor in a second, which means no longer are we, no discussion. I'm sorry. Yeah, I believe that to the applicant, do you understand what's,
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in front of us. There are approvable solutions with the staff as well. So, okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. You have 10 calendar days. Your application has been denied by the HDLC Commission. You have 10 calendar days from the date of this meeting to appeal to City Council in writing. The staff will furnish you with the details of this appeals process.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving on, item B, 2013 Burgundy Street. Is the applicant present? Hi, please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
John Fink, 2013 Burgundy.
Thank you, Mr. Fink. The staff will make their presentation. We'll hear your comments following.
This is an application to replace an existing non-conforming alley gate at the right side of a contributing rated one-story, two-family residential building with a new inappropriate gate in full control Marigny. The existing residential building was likely constructed between 1865 and 1875 and appears to have retained many of its original architectural features and details. Both existing alley gates on the left and right sides of the building do not currently meet the HDLC guidelines or CZO based on their height, configuration, materiality. However, both have been installed for over 10 years without a citation and are considered permitted nonconformities. As such, staff can approve the repair or replacement of these gates in kind to match the existing configuration. However, removal and replacement of the permitted nonconformity with any other design or material is subject to review and approval based on the current requirements. The applicant is proposing to remove the existing right side gate to install a new gate to match the existing clip top style gate on the left side. Zoning has confirmed that they do not consider the proposed replacement to remove the permitted nonconformity status, and so the current excessive height can be maintained even if the fence design is repaired or modified in terms of their review. However, in addition to the proposed gate exceeding the HDLC maximum height limit of 7 feet, it does not appear historically consistent with the type and style of the main building, does not utilize the required vertical board wood cap, and clip top style fence boards are specifically prohibited by the guidelines. Based on this, staff recommends denial of the request and recommends the applicant consider replacing the existing gate in kind to match the existing condition or consider installing a simple 7-foot tall capped wood vertical board fence. Additionally, the new gate can be set back a few feet into the alley depth to alleviate any concerns about intruder access via the front porch.
Thank you. To the applicant, do you wish to address the commission?
Well, number one, I did not hear a word of what he said.
Okay. Why don't we hit we can hit the highlights if that would help.
Well, this is Mr. Dennis, I guess.
Yes.
Good to meet you after all these emails. I can tell you what I know about the gate that I'm requesting. And that is that in recent weeks, in fact, since last April, we have had numerous security issues on our block due to a bar that is at the end. And people have been gaining access to backyards over the conventional, over the gates. A 7-foot gate on that side of my house would be a mere hop, skip, and a jump from the porch. If you notice my porch with my house, which is not conforming, there is a flat surface which would be only a foot away and below the top of that conforming line. So I'm kind of leery about changing what I've got to allow more access to people behind the gate. So that's one particular aspect. Also, the gate, as you can see, is not really that visible since it's almost 7 feet back from the facade of the house and my neighbor's house. And with the 2 trash barrels in there, it's not visible as much. And the fence that the gate that I'm proposing would be faded to natural rather than staining it or painting it or anything. I'm also kind of reeling from a 75% increase in my homeowner's insurance. So financially, you can understand that building a complete new fence or gate would be difficult from retired fixed income. Also, raising rents is not possible. I'm getting good rents now. I don't want to lose my tenants, which are a risk. I recently had a pretty major health issue, which is expensive. So my options really are to use existing materials that I have left over from hurricane damage to put a gate that is 8 inches below what you see here and match the fence on the other side of the house. It would form a cohesive line of sight from one side to the other rather than having the juxtaposition of 2 different designs on the same facade. And that's basically it. Oh, and also on the other side of the street, every house with the exception of one, I believe, has gates that are 9 feet or above. And I know that they're non-conforming. I know that you can't really compare. And
we don't compare with the neighbors.
but I've also, the neighbors, including Gene Sizik,
We're,
you know, have all said that they're just gonna keep repairing what they've got as opposed to conforming. So I'm kind of leaning on that as the sign that we're really afraid with the security problems we're having with this bar and don't see much in the way of a light at the end of the tunnel on that at this point.
okay, well, Mr. Fink, let's address things. I gave you a little bit more time just to wrap up there. So I appreciate you coming in front of us. Have you owned your home for a long time on this block of the Marigny?
I bought the house in 2003. I've lived there since 2006 as a permanent resident.
Well, that's wonderful. And congratulations on home ownership, because that's huge in the city to be able to own your own home.
By the way, I came from a 16-room house in Boston. It's a
Well, and given our housing right now, I will say that's really amazing to be able to do that. And obviously the upkeep and, you know, in New Orleans and in the historic neighborhoods is something that's an ongoing challenge for everyone. But congratulations on that, because I think that is a huge thing to know that you own your own home and are here in front of us with this application. I will say, I mean, we can go through this. This block I'm aware of. I do realize, and again, I guess tell your council member about your bar that's on the corner that is causing issues. But again, we are, you know, just here to look at the guidelines and work in the guidelines and really assess those kind of equally throughout. So on this one, I mean, I think it's been pretty clear in terms of, I guess, to the commissioners, this one. So there's a non-conforming portion of it and then the conforming portion. I know that Commissioner Wakeman is prepared on this one because this is her district and I know not far from her. So I'm going to go ahead and just see if she has a motion or has thoughts on this one in the Marigny.
I do have a question for the staff for clarity of my understanding. So as I read the recommendation, he could replace both gates exactly the way they are today without any problem. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. At the 9-foot height that they have. What he cannot do, again, I'm looking to make sure I understand, is the odd gate that's not stockaded. He cannot replace it with a 9-foot stockaded fence to match the one on the other side.
Yeah, I think the issue is really just the spiked top stockade fence style, because zoning has already confirmed that they would consider it the maintenance of the permitted nonconformity in terms of height. So the design changes, it can still be 9 feet tall. It's just in terms of the HDLC guidelines, we specifically prohibit those types of gates. It could be 9 feet tall with a cap, or it could be pushed back into the alley to reduce the ability for someone to get from the porch over it. But that's kind of where we are with what we can prove at staff level, I recommend.
So is that understood?
Couldn't hear a word.
So the staff,
I hear a little bit about pushing the gate back.
But you are not prohibited from making your gates 9 feet because you're grandfathered in at the 9-foot height. What you cannot do is the odd gate that has like a door in it. That's what it looks like. What is it? The right-handed gate?
It's Luan plywood.
The right-handed gate, you cannot replace it with a stockaded fence. The left-handed gate, you could replace with a stockaded fence. The logic being that you're grandfathered in, what you have today is grandfathered in. You can replace like with like. Is that?
No, I
understand.
The gate on the left is a shared gate between me and my neighbor.
Okay, and so that could be replaced exactly the way it is today. The right-handed gate, you can replace it at the 9-foot height, but it has to be, but it cannot be stockaded.
And I think, so, yeah, so what we're here today to look at is your request is to replace both the door with vertical boards for the fence but to also provide the capped, the stockaded top.
No, my
Mm.
application was to replace it to look like the gate on the other side, so there's cohesive.
Understood.
Sure.
And so, again, you cannot replace it with the capped. You can't change it to match that in terms of staff recommendation.
So again, back to the staff, but does he, on the right-handed gate, which is really, I think, the one at issue, does it have to be exactly? Can he do a 9-foot traditional capped fence?
I think if that works for the commission and you agree and vote for that, then yes, since
Yeah.
zoning has also confirmed it wouldn't need a waiver, for example. But the guidelines usually require fences to be 7 feet, but in this case, it's already existing at that. It would just be the change of material to a fence style that is approvable per the guidelines versus the clip top.
So in essence, what we're saying is you can, on the right-hand side, put in a 9-foot fence, but it would need to be a vertical boards that are capped, like you see throughout the district.
Correct.
But not on my street, but.
Oh, yes, there are gates that are on your street that are not the stockaded come to a point. They're
So-
vertical boards, but then have a horizontal one across the top.
So basically, we're talking the 7-foot design raised to 9 feet.
Exactly.
Okay,
So I make a motion.
I'll second that motion, but I also will recommend that you get with the staff after this motion, after the meeting, and make sure your plans are approved so that there's no misunderstanding about what was approved and what's allowed.
Sure.
So you're not back here because it's a little confusing. But I would, I agree with the motion. I second it, but I would ask you to get with the staff and get it approved before you actually do it.
Commissioner Wakeman, will you repeat your motion?
Can I ask one further question? If I raise that fence or gate to 9 feet, would you entertain a faux cap? In other words, apply a 3-inch board across the top to look like that, but not have the depth of like a 4-inch cap to the fence?
The cap component is also to help protect the end grains of the boards. So that's why it covers the entirety of those end grains. So I'm not sure without seeing a drawing or detail of that, but it sounds like it may not work in terms of protecting the boards, even though it has the appearance from the outside.
Could you
Yes.
amend your motion, Commissioner? Well, when you make your motion, Commissioner Wakeman, can you just add that could be reviewed at staff level?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I am recommending that the approval of a replacement stockaded 9-foot fence on the left-hand side and what is the formal term that we use?
For the
A
fence
cap.
on the right, that's just a capped wood.
For a
board.
capped wood fence on the right-hand side at the 9-foot level. That the, excuse me, the right-handed, that both of them be reviewed by the staff before implementation.
I'm not applying for the left side of the house.
Okay, all right, then strictly for the right-hand side.
I'll second.
Commissioner Wakeman made the motion. Commissioner Bressler seconds. Is there any public comment on this application? No public comments. To the commissioners, All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Your application, I'm going to read the denial rights just because it's a bit hybrid here. Your application has been denied by HDLC Commission. You have 10 calendar days from the date of this meeting to appeal to City Council in writing, and the staff will furnish you with the details of the appeals process. Thank you. I would also recommend you continue to remind your council member about your nuisance on the block as well. So I think there's several neighbors that are upset about that one. So, and good luck with your project. Yep, thank you. All right, new business demolition applications. Item A, 4905 Dauphine Street. Is the applicant present? This is code enforcement, the city of New Orleans. Is anyone present from the city? Okay. We will, to the staff, have you been in touch with the city to see if they were going to attend or not going to attend on this one?
Yes, I have been in communication with them. I was under the impression that they would be here.
Okay. This is in Holy Cross, as we do with many of our items. I don't know that we should hear this item without at least hearing from the applicant. Is there a commissioner who wants to make, we could move this down into the docket and see if they show up, or make a motion to defer this application.
I would imagine if they're not here now, they're probably not going to be in
Okay.
attendance and
Okay.
are awaiting the outcome of the commission.
Okay. All right, then we will move forward with the item.
This is an application for demolition of a contributing rated one-story single-family home to grade in Full Control Holy Cross. This wood frame craftsman double shotgun is estimated by FEMA to have been constructed between 1915 and 1925. Albeit in disrepair, the home's stylistic details are largely intact. It retains several characteristics of the craftsman style, such as exposed rafter beams, porch piers, and gable window, as well as multi-light side lights flanking the front entryways. The wooden siding on the building may be original. An interior inspection was not possible as the HDLC inspector could not obtain access. However, from an exterior inspection, the inspector reported that the home appears to be in salvageable condition. Not only is the home subject to neglect, but also to active demolition. Photo documentation shows that the home has been systematically disassembled over the years to facilitate deterioration. Staff recommends that the building envelope be secured quickly. Otherwise, the home will continue to deteriorate past the point of salvageability. Bringing the property back into use does not appear to be prohibitively expensive, provided that measures are taken now to prevent further decay. So staff would recommend a denial of the request for full demolition.
Thank you.
Oh, there is also a case history, if you would like me to recap that.
I think if you maybe read the highlights.
Okay, so in September 2015, they were found guilty of 7 different violations. In 2017, they were found guilty of 3. In January 2021, a DYN was issued by the HDLC. In November 2021, they were found guilty of 11 different violations. And in November of 2022, that was when the city made the official demolition application.
Thank you. Okay, well, it certainly is unfortunate this property is in this state of repair. It does look like it's been dismantled and there's debris sitting on the site as evidence of such, and it's happened very quickly. To the commissioners, anyone who's interested in taking this one to make a motion? Yes, Commissioner Bressler. I'm sorry, Commissioner Bruno.
Has anybody talked to the owner of this property? Or can the owner be found?
The owner is the city of New Orleans.
They own the property?
Yes, the city code enforcement, city of New Orleans is the applicant and owns the property currently.
Oh,
I don't
Correct?
believe
Or they
that.
don't own it? It's just city of,
No, it is owned by a different gentleman. When we looked at his different addresses, I believe that we found they were not actual addresses, so it seems that
It's
he's
caught
trying
in.
to evade citation or violation.
right, it's caught kind of in
and
limbo. Yeah,
too bad. It'd be good if somebody could find him and make him sell the property. Or encourage him to sell the property, shall I say.
absolutely. I'm sure there might be someone out there doing that already.
So I had a question. The city is not requiring it that it be demolished. They're just suggesting that it be demolished. It's not an imminent danger of collapse or anything.
No, our inspector did go and confirm, they looked under the building. They couldn't get inside, but from our inspection, it does not seem to be past the point of salvageability. It seems like it's in fair condition.
But if we deny it, what happens if the owner's gone, right? City owns it or cities,
The code enforcement is applying to demolish it.
right? And if we deny that, then what happens?
If we deny it, then we will, I guess, continue to find property owner or the commission decision will be appealed to city council.
This
most
is,
likely.
this is similar to the application we heard on Third Street in the last couple months.
And code enforcement also has the option of moving the property to sheriff sale. For
Yeah.
sale to hopefully someone who would be interested in rehabilitating it.
And that's really what we want, I think, right?
Yes, that's what we want.
So we could deny it and recommend they go to sheriff's sale.
Absolutely. I do want to ask if there's any public comment on this application. Okay. Oh, forgive me, right here. Please step forward. and
My
state your
name is
and
Betty
address.
Perez and I live at 4910 Dauphine Street, right across the street. I've been blessed to live with this house since 2016, moving in, buying a beautiful historic home right across the street. The entire block is made up, of course, of beautiful historic homes, and this owner, since I've lived there since August of 2016, it has continually been deteriorating. He is a business owner. He's doing very well. I have visited his home to see what he lives in Chalmette. This is not someone who cannot fix up this home. So we have a blight committee in Holy Cross. I'm here as a resident, not as my being the vice president of the Holy Cross Neighborhood Association. I have to clarify that. So if anyone's watching, they're like, ooh, what role is Betty playing today? I'm playing a resident across the street. And I'm going to read something that several neighbors and I have written up just for clarification, so I don't forget anything. All right?
Okay.
Okay. Oh, I didn't.
Just a
bring-
reminder, you have 2 minutes.
I will. And
And-
it'll be faster if I read it, believe me, than shooting from my hip. This letter is to provide an overview and update regarding the property located at what we just stated, 4905, 4907 Dauphine Street. The Holy Cross Neighborhood Blight Committee and various members of our community have contacted HDLC many times over multiple years regarding this structure, its status as a severely blighted property, and immediate safety and fire concerns it poses. We have also contacted multiple city departments regarding a violent squatter, Mr. Alan Rader III, that has been allowed to access this property. To provide a brief update, the home has been out of legal operation since 2019. Since then, multiple squatters have accessed the property over various times. The most recent and longest tenure squatter was allowed to occupy the home by the owner, has dismantled the property to the point of being beyond salvageable, leading to the property being scheduled for demolition. Both Energy and the Sewage and Water Board have made multiple trips to the home to disconnect the utilities that were illegally again turned on multiple occasions by Mr. Alan Rader III. Though this person has been evicted from the property in question, he continues to access the property, removing, unfortunately, all historical features of the home and anything deemed valuable. The property also continues to pose a high risk of fire due to it being completely unsecured and containing a large amount of garbage and trash left in and around the yard. To be clear, the owner has not made any attempt to maintain the minimum upkeep of this property. The roof, loose debris, and parts of the dying trees continue to cause damage to adjacent homes. This owner has definitely demonstrated a complete lack of commitment to this home. One instance, though it's not related to this house, I'll just quickly say one of my neighbors went to his bar.
That's 2 minutes. Please. wrap up your
And
comments.
when he said, "Where do you live?" And she lives across street from his house. She didn't know that time. He said, "Are you afraid of being murdered and raped?" So this is what this.
Please wrap
gentleman
up your
thinks.
comments. We're at 2 minutes.
All right. So we would like this house demolished as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I think we're all in agreement that this house is in a state of disrepair and needs rehabilitation, and wish that the owner would take responsibility for this and that we wouldn't see this item on the agenda right now. I will say again, as we look at other demolitions, as we have a very long list in front of us, this house is, from the photos that have been submitted, does appear to be eligible for rehabilitation and does not look like something we would typically recommend demolition. The staff's recommendation is denial of full demolition. We do not have a representative from Holy Cross on the Holy Cross Commissioner. Is there anyone else from the commission who would like to make a motion? Commissioner Hackenberg?
Yeah, I just would like to point out, while this is a terrible situation and we have a recalcitrant owner, the big issue here is if we allow this to be demolished, we have just endorsed the process of turning your house into a public nuisance to get it torn down. And it's going to spread around the city very quickly. And in that spirit, I make a motion to deny the request.
Thank you.
And urge the city to put the property up for such sheriff's sale if possible.
Thank you, Commissioner Hackenberg. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that. Would you also want to add to request that the city secure the property so that the squatters won't have access to it?
I will add that if the city is capable of doing that. I certainly hope they will.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor in a second. Is there any additional comment on this application? All those in favor? All those opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Your application has been denied by the HDLC Commission. You have 10 calendar days from the date of this meeting to appeal to City Council in writing. The staff will furnish you with the details of this appeals process. Thank you. Item B, 2516 Upper Line. Is the applicant present? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record and the staff, and we'll hear the staff's report.
Good afternoon, Zach Smith Consulting, 530 South Norman C. Francis.
Thank you. The staff will make their report and we'll hear your comments following.
This is an application for the demolition of a contributing rated one-story single-family residential building to grade. FEMA survey research indicates the original single-style shotgun type building was estimated to have been constructed around 1910 or 1920. However, it appears on the fire insurance map in 1909 as one of the first 4 houses on the 2500 block of Upper Line. Further research of newspaper archives shows the obituary of the deceased owner and funeral notice on October 29, 1907. The historical portion of the building is a 4-room single shotgun primarily constructed of wood studs set on brick masonry piers. Evidence under the building shows masonry foundations for chimneys between the first and second rooms, now 1 room, as well as rooms 3 and 4. The chimneys, interior fireplaces were removed at an unknown date. The 4-room shotgun had a wood frame 2-room addition on the brick masonry piers built at the rear of the building sometime before 1951, as indicated by the Sanborn and fire insurance maps, but most likely outside the period of significance. While reproduction might not be cost prohibitive, recreation of historical details such as columns, windows, and trim would be difficult and unlikely. Furthermore, this is one of the last buildings on the 2500 block that retains its single-story massing and eclectic craftsman and classical details. Any new construction built in place of 2516 Upper Line would likely not share this building's same massing, roofline, and character, which would alter the streetscape considerably. The 1-story eclectic craftsman retains its scale. The only changes to the structure's footprint is the rear addition. The front facade with the altered window and door retain the original building character intent. Although the building is in poor condition, a good amount of the contributing portion of the home appears to be structurally sound and watertight and not in imminent danger of collapse, as cited by inspector. For this reason, staff cannot recommend approval of the demolition of the historic front portion comprised of the first 2, now combined into 1, rooms. The rear addition and contributing 3rd and 4th room, which are in great disrepair, should be removed, but the rehabilitation of the contributing portion of the building is possible. Staff recommendation is denial of the request for full demolition. However, staff would be in support of an application for partial demolition where the front portion of the house that is in better condition is retained with a new addition toward the rear.
Thank you. So the applicant, do you wish to address the commission? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners and staff. Zach Smith again, on behalf of the owner, and I think a neighbor would like to speak after. We know that it's always a tall order to ask the staff and even this commission to demolish any sort of structure, especially where there's any sort of question as to what could potentially be saved and salvaged. In this particular case, I think there's unanimous agreement that there's significant structural issues with the rear. I would say that based on what we've seen, based on what our own structural damage report shows, there's a bit more severity to that structural integrity, even towards the front. The general ability to keep it and retain it in any sort of meaningful way without essentially doing a facadectomy is going to be pretty much impossible. The owner is completely prepared to take every single piece of historical element and keep them, salvage them, and potentially either reuse them, repurpose them, or donate them to the appropriate group to reutilize at another building. In this particular case, I want to make sure that the commission is aware that the Code Enforcement Office, as recently as October, had essentially noticed in one of their opinions that demolition was actually ordered on this building. Subsequent to that, there was a change in ownership. The new owner would, of course, love to honor that order and take this down. Speaking of this, though, there's generally a safety issue with this building. If you look through your files, you're going to see other neighbors who typically all are homeowners who look at this building, have seen this building as a blight in their neighborhood. They've seen this building as a safety hazard for themselves, for their families, for their children, and are very much on board. I know that there's a lot of neighborhoods in this city where folks—
2 minutes. Please wrap up your comments.
You see again and again and again where folks do value buildings in their neighborhood. In this particular one, there's seems to be a unanimous position that this building is much preferred to be taken down than salvaged again with any sort of just keeping the front facade. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and call public comment on this application. I have a speaker card and a piece of notebook paper, which I'll need to convert to a speaker card.
That is a staff issue. We ran out of.
Oh, okay, got it. It's like, I have one. Well, okay. All right. So Rob Seifert, is that correct? Please step forward and state your name and address for the record. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, how are y'all? My name is Rob Seifert. My wife and I, Mamina Torregano, live right next door to it, and we're the ones that purchased this property. This property has been vacant since before Katrina. We ended up purchasing the previous homeowner, which our house is right there with a balcony. Tried to buy it for 3 years. She wouldn't buy it. We ended up buying it. It's definitely a safety concern. It's a health concern. We are about to have a baby on the way. I think I have 16 houses on that signature list. It's the general concern of our neighborhood and our block. We are absolutely willing to have all of the historic elements donated. We will definitely pay to have that extracted, especially the columns. And it's also a blight on the block.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Next, we have Stephanie Beach. Please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Beach. I am a resident at 2519 Upper Line Street. I live across the street from the property in question. As Rob, the current owner, has already stated, this property has sat not only uninhabited, but uninhabitable for years, and it has fallen into a state of complete disrepair. It has a history of vagrants coming onto the property, taking materials from the property, stripping any valuable material from the property, which poses a threat to the safety of our neighborhood. And this building itself, while the front portion may be somewhat salvageable, the back portion is falling in on itself in certain areas. I understand that the inspector's report previously said that any efforts to rehabilitate this property would be economically unfeasible. So every single person in this neighborhood absolutely wishes to see this property demolished and have just simply a vacant lot be absorbed into our neighbor's curtilage of their property, so that no longer do we have to deal with any threat to our neighborhood or any threat to the safety of our neighborhood by having this house just remain idly.
Thank you for your comments. Is there any additional public comment on this application or anyone else who wishes to speak? Okay, no additional public comments. All right, I want to clear up a couple things here that have been stated by both the applicant and the last two speakers. There's two, just for everyone who's for the commissioners and for public audience as well. So there are two reports. There's a structural report that was provided by the applicant, which is not in the favor of the house, which is often the case. And then there is an inspection report from the staff. And I'm going to ask that the staff read the conclusion of the HDLC demolition inspection report, which is where the city's inspectors who visit a number of homes across the city also make a report. And so I'm just going to ask that the staff reads that.
Just the conclusion?
Just the conclusion.
Okay.
But we can go by item, but I think also the images speak to this as well.
Okay. So given the condition of the foundation and framing at the front of the building, a rehabilitation of this portion would not be unfeasible or cost prohibitive. The rear of the building would require extensive shoring and reframing. That would be costly and potentially impractical, which is why we have given the recommendation. that we
Okay.
have.
And so again, the recommendation from the staff that I think we'd like to have the discussion around is the recommendation is denial of the request for full demolition. But consideration for that, like the staff would be in support of a partial demolition where the front portion of the house is retained, but again, allows for the demolition in the rear. So I am curious to the applicant and to the owner who's here, correct? That is, have y'all considered that or talked to the staff about that in your redevelopment plans? Please step forward to the mic just so everyone can hear you. And we really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, I wish my wife could be here. She's speaking at a conference. When we originally decided to purchase this home, we did it for three reasons. One of them being so a developer could come in and build some camelback house or turning into a Airbnb rental property or the other. The other component to it is that my wife and I both have older mothers, and at some point we would like the option to put them next door. We're about to have our first baby, if so need be. And then the main reason is my wife is pregnant and we want to stay in the city, and to do that, we want our kids to be able to play in the yard. So we also bought it to have the back half as a yard. So we don't have plans to rebuild on this lot at this time. We wanted to have the options to rebuild a different size house further to the back, but we don't have plans to, that was never our vision, to keep the front or flip the house and sell it to someone that's just not our vision for this property.
Okay, so you really don't have any redevelopment plans for this property at this time?
I mean, we have concepts that we're talking about, different options that we're thinking about doing with it, but again, that wasn't, we didn't want to buy it and go straight into building something. I mean, that wasn't our vision. We wanted to acquire the property. We wanted to be able to, basically, it's definitely an issue in our block.
So to your neighbor's comments about the house being occupied and having people in it at miscellaneous times, have you now secured the property?
There's a hole inside it. Y'all aren't seeing the picture. There is a hole where you can see straight through the house on the left side of it. It's all termite damage. See, this is actually the good side. Other side, there you can see straight through the house. Some of the weatherboards have dropped and they're missing. And yeah, it's that side, but it's right in the middle of the area where they're saying that we could tear down. Like you can see into the house.
So the house is wide open to the elements right now?
Yes.
How long have you owned the house?
We bought it on December 28th.
Okay, do you have any So I guess you're not interested in boarding up the house either for your neighbors. You're just coming straight to us to request for demolition. Okay, all right, that's great. That's basically what we need to know. Commissioner Bressler.
I had a question. I guess we were talking about the front part and then the rest of it.
Right.
How much is the, this is a question for staff. How much is the front part that you want them to keep? Is it just the front room and then, or square footage? I mean, how far back does it go as far as what you want them to
There's a
keep? versus
diagram
what you're-
showing here.
That's the diagram on the screen,
So basically, I think it's like 2 bays back.
which matches the neighbor. So do you live in the Camelback property to the right?
Yeah.
Okay, so matches, it's basically,
I mean, what I'm wondering is we want them, we don't care about the rear half. We think that's gone.
We absolutely care. But we do feel that that part is probably beyond salvage and would need to be reconstructed. Yeah, and the reason I say that is because I'm getting a sense from this application and the one before it that we're seeing sort of a situation where property owners find that it's better to let a property deteriorate for their own reasons. If they want to have a vacant lot, if they want to be able to build, you know, a new construction,
Right.
You know, so I want to be clear that this commission particularly has issue with that, and that, you know, our position would be if you have a blighted property that you own next door to you and you can't, or you don't intend to redevelop it, you should try to sell it instead of hoping that this commission would take it down. To Commissioner Hackenberg's comment earlier, I see that, you know, if this kind of application is allowed to go forward, then that creates a cancer across the city where, you know, other people find this to be a way forward.
My question though is, what's the square footage of the front part? Do we know?
it's,
I mean, could you just keep the front part, enclose that? Have that as sort of your extra room for your mother-in-law or whatever, and then tear down the back part and get your backyard that way?
I mean, it's possible. You know, like I said, we're kind of just kicking a few things around right now. Like, but what we're not doing is selling it. And we're not selling to a developer, and that's what we're not.
But if you were to keep it and keep the front part of the property, you could easily secure it so that it wouldn't be a nuisance to neighbors. Is that correct?
The front door is locked.
Mhm.
You know, the front door is locked. I guess that back shed is nailed shut. You know, we bought it from the granddaughter of the person that built the home.
Mhm.
And she had some stuff in there that over the last, I don't know, since we purchased it back in December, she's been retrieving out some antique furniture she wanted, because she had visions of moving in it, and then that never happened. And so they have the back area nailed, but the side of the house, that right there past that red line, that whole area is where weatherboards are missing. So
if we were to deny the application for a wholesale demolition, but approve the demolition of the rear portion from the red line back, then do you believe you'd be able to secure the building?
I'd have to speak to my wife about it, but I would think so.
would you be open to a deferral to see if you can do that? Or my other concern, Commissioner Bruno, if we don't have certainty from the applicant and the homeowner that you're going to do and follow through on what you're saying you're going to do, we're going to see you here for an accidental demolition, which we've seen a lot. And we'd rather not see you twice. I'm also just in general, and I will say this, I'm both, and I agree with Mr. Block on this, that the previous application and this one, I'm sort of struck by the fact that I'm really excited you were able to, get this property and that it didn't fall into the hands of, say, code enforcement or other entities. And that you're here and you're a neighbor and you do know your other neighbors on the block as well. But the idea that you can acquire a historic vacant building and then just demolish it for more yard is not what this commission supports at all. And we would also hope that council doesn't support that either, and that we live in an urban fabric in a historic urban fabric. And I feel like that's why we live in New Orleans and not in another part outside the city either. And so we would just hope, again, you have a house that is adjacent to it, that you would explore other options for this property and work with both the staff and the commission and be a model, kind of what could happen with a property that you required next door, that it wasn't as easy as just taking it all down, but came up with a creative solution.
Well, we plan on building some, but what we don't like, we don't. The design of the house, like, we just don't know where we're gonna put it, how we're gonna do it. We were talking about making it an L shape. I'm just not sure. So but we're also working on another project on our current home too at the moment. So we have stages of what we're doing for that, both of those properties as we speak. But at some point, we're talking about absorbing 2516 into our property. So as one lot, not as two separate lots. So, it's funny, our last house we bought, new construction in another neighborhood. This thing we bought because we were like, okay, we're gonna stay here. We found it, we said we're gonna stay here. So we never done anything like this before. And so we're just now learning kind of where we're at right now.
And I think we're really we're very grateful you're here and you're part of the process and understand what's, the dialogue that we're having here. I think, again, you're in New Orleans and have chosen to live in a partial historic district. And as such, there's a character to the street and a scale of the street that differentiates New Orleans and these historic neighborhoods from other places outside the city where you have a very wide front house with larger lot. And if that's of interest, historic New Orleans may not be for you in some way. If that's the interest, is to do a very large front home, maybe it is, and that it is, it's an unusual character to do that. And so I hope that your design team that you work with could come up with a way to creatively, incorporate and or rework this, a U-shape, something else that might work to be able to preserve this. As it stands, the staff is recommending denial of the request and would really urge and like you to encourage, if you would be open to the partial demolition. I guess, Commissioner Bruno, this is in your district. We just want to make sure it's really clear that we do not, again, don't support just demolishing the lot with either not knowing what's going to happen there and or making it just a yard and or, we don't approve any demolition anyway without redevelopment plans in hand. So again, and it's for the same reason, squatters come on vacant lots as much as they come on, houses that are unsecured. We would also highly encourage you, I realize it doesn't seem big. You said it's a big hole on one side of the building, but just to board up and secure the property as well. Because often we don't have the owner present in these conversations, but we have the benefit of that today.
We wouldn't just leave a vacant lot. We would build a very nice fence across the front. It would be landscaped to mirror the front of our house, which is a cacti garden, which the neighborhood really likes. So we wouldn't just tear down and leave some hole in there. There's a house across the street from us that has a completely empty lot with a gazebo on it, and they just put some little blue fence up, but we wouldn't do that.
And understood. And it seems like you don't necessarily know what your vision is yet for this property. You're exploring your options. This commission, the reason we all volunteer to be on here and hear case after case here is that everyone here is really passionate about keeping the historic fabric. And also, we're also here to reinforce and uphold the guidelines that are here. And so I can tell you, we see a lot of applications for demolition, and given the state of the house, it does not appear to be, the first two rooms do seem to be salvageable on this application. And so, and we can see that. And again, the inspector that works for the city is who we also rely on for this inspection. To staff, do you want to make a comment?
I just want to make a comment about the interior inspection. And as far as the building being sealed, the building was secured. The weather boards that are loose are small gaps, not any more than 1.5 inches or 2 inches as seen in some of the images. And that's in the center portion. Based upon the inspection, what we assume is that rear addition essentially was not built well and pulled the rear 2 rooms down, which is where that failure is happening right now, as seen by the corner piers underneath the house. But again, the interior inspection photos don't show broken up walls with copper ripped out. Like you can also see in the front portion, the boards, the sheathing for the roofing is completely dry and intact, and relatively no damage as seen through the hole in the ceiling. So I just wanted to add that into that.
Understood. Thank you for the additional detail.
So we can do the deferral if you like.
You're okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Bruno, do you want to make a motion? Are you, the applicant is requesting a deferral? Do you want to make a motion for deferral on this application?
I guess so. I was going to make a motion, another kind of motion, but I'll move for deferral.
Okay. Yes, for 1 meeting, 30 days.
Okay.
And seconded by Commissioner King. Is there any additional public comment on this application?
Again, Stephanie Beach. I just want to address the concern that this is a property that the owners have allowed to fall into disrepair in order to seek the demolition, which is not the case here. The property was previously in this state and the new owners have now purchased it to correct the issue in the neighborhood. And so I don't want anyone to think that we're all just coming and like ganging up so that we can get this demolished. That's not the case in this situation. And I've heard that concern be expressed more than once today, and I just want to alleviate that fear.
Thank you for your comment. The comment that I made about it being open to the element was from the actual applicant stating that
No.
into the record. We do not need to debate it,
Sorry.
but we do hear your comments. Thank you. We have a motion on the floor in a second. So with that, we're gonna call for a vote. All those in favor of the deferral for 30 days? All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries. We will see you here in 30 days. And again, greatly appreciate the applicant. We hope to see that you are willing to incorporate it as a partial demolition. Thank you. All right, item C, 39-41 Allard Boulevard. Is the applicant present?
Gregory Romig, 45 Allard Boulevard.
Thank you. The staff will make their presentation and we'll hear comments following.
This is an application for demolition of more than 50% of the existing wall structure through the increase of height at a contributing rated 1.5 story 2-family residential building in partial control Parkview. I'm going to try and do some cliff notes, sort of summarize here. 41 Allard Boulevard is a contributing rated building in the Parkview Historic District, constructed in circa 1890. The raised Queen Anne frame cottage sits within the late 19th century, fits within the late 19th century, early 20th century development of the Parkview area. And overall, the building adds significantly to the two ensemble of the Parkview district, as well as the surrounding block of Allard Boulevard. The Queen Anne cottage retains several character defining features at the exterior. Although the building has been raised, the building retains its overall asymmetrical shape and form. In addition, the residence retains its decorative front porch columns, balustrade, and spindlework frieze. The Queen Anne stylization of the building presently adds to its overall aesthetic interest, making the building integral to the Parkview district. I'll also add that there's one question that says the alternatives to demolition that have been explored by the applicant. The petition to increase the wall height is in lieu of a full demolition that will be further explained under the inspection section. The HDLC inspector Alex Nassar performed an inspection at the building on November 14th, 2022, and at that time determined that the building was in good structural condition. It was clear that there were some wood, rot, and termite damage present at the building. So following the advice of the inspector, the property owner revised their approach to focus on a path toward rehabilitation rather than full demolition. And at the request of the HDLC, the owner performed selective interior demolition to determine the overall extent of this existing damage. So Alex went back on February 23rd, 2023 to survey the damage revealed by the interior demolition. And the most current inspection found that the building has existing termite damage throughout the main floor that likely occurred prior to the building being raised. The raised basement portion of the building was determined to be in fair condition, but in need of obvious repairs. Approximately 50% of the existing structure at the ground floor has existing termite damage. The two front rooms on the left side elevation of the basement area require significant structural remediation. Sorry. It was noted that the damage of the main floor does not really correspond with the damage at the ground floor, thus, making it a little bit older potentially and not active. Presently, the building has been determined to be in fair structural condition, overall condition, with specific areas of the building requiring more rehab work than others. The current proposal involves the restructuring of more than 50% of the exterior walls to accommodate raising the existing basement. This proposed work essentially creates a situation in which the existing main floor becomes a second story with the addition of a full story beneath, reading as the main entry and front facade. In addition, 36% wall demolition and approximately 40% roof demolition are proposed to accomplish this change. That demolition mostly occurs at the rear of the building. Demolition definition number 4 explicitly denotes this situation, and typically the HDLC prefers proposals that accommodate square footage through the construction of rear or side yard additions rather than raising existing buildings. For that reason, staff recommends denial of the proposed demolition.
Thank you. So the applicant, do you wish to address the question?
I do.
Okay, you have 2 minutes.
My wife and I own 41 Allard, which is directly adjacent to our home that we constructed and were awarded the HDLC Award for Historic Excellence in New Construction in 1998. For over 25 years, we have witnessed the deterioration of 41 Allard with the continued failure to comply with elements of Chapter 26, Article 4 of the City of New Orleans Code. My wife and I are lifelong residents of New Orleans. My wife's father served as director of the streets of New Orleans for over 25 years, and the Romick family has long volunteered and supported the city. As such, we respect the service that you as commissioners provide, and we appreciate the responsiveness of Chase and Alex Nasser through this process. We recently invested in the interior demolition of 481 to evaluate the structural soundness of the home, being careful to retain architectural elements such as plaster ceiling medallions and crown molding. There is significant damage noted throughout the upper and lower units for moisture intrusion, termite infestation, and neglect. Additionally, we have seen the lower units regularly flood over our 25 years. Our goal is to restore this home to grandness and character with Allard Boulevard in the Parkview District. Our plans include, at the rear of the property, removing a portion of the existing roof line and exterior wall, that portion that is not part of the original structure, and less than 50% of the roof line and exterior walls. Preserving 100% of the architecturally appealing front facade, reestablishing the center hall within the living space of the second level, raising the structure so that it is above flood level and is insurable, bringing the first floor into compliance with code for minimum ceiling height, allowing it to become a functional living space for my mother-in-law, aligning the new roof line to a height that does not exceed its neighboring roof lines, and improving the safety of the exterior stairway entrance to meet city code. With our current design, we believe this is a restoration and not a demolition. We request that we be allowed to raise the property to preserve the home while we retain the architectural character of the home and the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Right at 2 minutes.
Correct.
Thank you. And we appreciate you being here to go through this as well. And thank you. So I guess with this, we receive a number of these too. And this is why the definition of demolition was revised, was actually exactly for this reason in terms of the raising the house up, putting a new floor underneath. And it does significantly alter the exterior fabric of the front facade of this home. I will let the staff speak to that, but I know that we've talked quite a bit, but this is exactly why. And I believe the commissioners are fully aware since we had a recent presentation on this as well. And just going through why this definition of demolition was changed. This seems to be a very straightforward case as to why that we made that change. This is in the Parkview District. I'm going to see if there's any additional public comment for this application. Susan Johnson. Okay, thank you. Any other public comment on this application? No public comment. Commissioner King.
This is in my district. And I'm your neighbor. I live very close to you. I love your house, and I actually love this house as well. I've seen it a lot. I remember you guys had you had a rental in a period down there. You had another office or building. Maybe it wasn't you, but whoever's before you within the last couple of years. So it's been Commerce has been used, and I've been in and out of a lot. So I I don't look at it as a blight and this horrible thing that some of our other neighbors have said and all those things. I understand that. I think you live on one of the most beautiful streets in the whole city. So I understand that everything is horrible in comparison. But to me, I think it's all gorgeous. So I'm gonna agree with the staff recommendations. I don't particularly see how it's something that I can be inclined to agree with, but I thank you. And purchasing the house and trying to fix it up and all that, but I see no way where I think you should be able to tear it down either. So that's,
Well, we're not tearing it down, we're raising it.
but to us, you kind of are. And I understand what you're saying, and I think
And-
that part's confusing.
Can I ask a question as far as,
I'm gonna let the staff speak now.
Just to speak to that, this was included in the demolition definition because once you raise a building like this to lose its appearance as either a one-story building or a raised basement, one-story building to a two-story building, it basically eliminates the architectural significance of the structure and undermines it because the building loses its architectural type in the process. It's no longer a center hall cottage. It's no longer a raised basement bungalow. It becomes something that it was never intended to be, and its architectural integrity is lost in the process. So that's why we consider this a drastic action and something not necessarily demolition per se, but something that ultimately erodes the character integrity of the structure. And just if too many things like this are approved, too many demolitions happen, National Register districts can lose their contributing status. So we work hard to make sure that the historic district that was created is protected and maintained for the character for which it was designated.
I have a question, just for my clarification on that. So it's like an 8-foot basement when you go in there. They couldn't bring it up 2 feet to make it so that it becomes more of that thing. We run into that, I know, in Uptown and those partial, when they try to make those expansions. Does that run into him being over the 50%?
Well, the interesting thing about raised cottages is the reason why they are raised was to respond to their environment and to allow a floor that was actually designed to flood and let the waters come in, let the waters recede, and you protect the main living floor. So this building is already incredibly resilient and designed for its environment and floodproof to an extent. These ground floors are often, inhabited over time. And then, there's an effort to make them code compliant, which includes, setting that floor up on another plinth so that it is now flood resistant. I would argue that the most prudent course of action would be to allow that ground floor to operate as it always did, which is to protect the main floor from flooding. And if additional square footage is desired, that it be added to the rear of the building when possible, or the attic story where dormers could be installed.
They don't have a ton of a rear on that one in terms of, I looked at it in terms of that, but so that's just why I'm wondering in terms of if they do get the 2 feet on the bottom with the foundation idea, that would that give them enough room for that? I want to understand that.
In other applications such as this, we've requested that they, go back to the drawing board and design a ground floor that still reads like a basement story so that it doesn't read like a 2-story building,
Okay.
and incorporate, a design that still has the appearance of what it was originally while allowing for that extra 2 feet. The problem becomes not only do owners want the flood protection of the 3 foot to meet the code requirement for flood protection, they also want increased floor to ceiling heights, which then raise it beyond something that can be considered believable as a redone basement story.
Which is how he runs over the 50%, pushing up those high times. And I get that.
Right.
I follow. I understand. Thank you.
To the applicant, I know you wanted to say something. Do you wish to address the commission?
just as a point of clarification with the ceiling height, and not quite understanding what was said there. I believe it was pointed out by Mr. Nassau that the existing ceiling height is not at code. It is 6 feet, 2 inches.
Correct, because originally.
So just as a point of revamping the plan, if there is what I understand the staff recommending is to not have that as living space and let Mother Nature do what it was intended to do, thus taking living units out of the city. Second point is if it is decided to go ahead and move it and have that as an occupancy area, then the ceiling heights would have to be raised. Is that correct, to be in code? And how is that done with the level above us in that situation?
I mean, it can, we've had other applications where they tweak it. I think the minimum floor to ceiling height is 7'6". So we generally request if people are going to make these applications that it have the minimum floor to ceiling height to meet code and the minimum amount of raising the building to meet current flood requirements in terms of base flood elevation.
Yeah, it's just like asking you to go up, raise it 10 feet versus asking to raise it 2 feet, like messes up your equation and that changes a lot for you. That's my understanding of it. And I imagine it just transfers through.
So is raising it 2 feet is what you're saying to bring it to flood?
Well, doing those like numbers without really looking them correctly, those numbers would,
Right,
I
but
seem to fit.
approximately.
Like they're saying about this thing versus 10 versus like the smaller amount. She's saying you need 18 inches or so. I imagine, yeah, around 2 feet probably doesn't put you in the same equation.
Okay,
I could be wrong if somebody.
It-
wants to pick.
I will say this, I think we need, what's in front of us today, whether to the applicant, you agree or disagree with the definition of demolition. We're following the definition of demolition, which was revised recently by both the staff and council to prohibit this exact thing where raising the floor, changing the character of the historic fabric, and significantly altering the building, which we've seen across the city in numerous cases. And this is very much that. It is raising, base flood elevation plus another floor. This is, we could put the presentation side by side with your drawings and show you exactly how this is exactly to the definition of demolition. And I would encourage you to read it if you haven't yet. And anyway, so yes, I think if we didn't have a motion on the floor, I know we've had a lot of conversation. It sounded like we were close to a motion by Commissioner King.
Well, my motion is just to agree with the staff recommendations.
Okay.
And that's all it was, but I applaud you. It's a beautiful house and, I get why you want to live in more room in your basement so it can be more livable. But I know people who have lived in it before in the past, so it's been livable and it's an enjoyable space to be in. And I hope whoever you're building it for will appreciate it and enjoy it because, I think it's a beautiful home. I really do.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Wakeman.
So I just, again, a point of clarification for me that the applicant could, in theory, come back. I'm addressing this to the staff, come back with a plan that in essence kept the raised basement appearance and added, but raised it just the necessary amount to meet code for flood and ceiling height.
And design it in such a way that it doesn't read as an architectural first floor, which this current design does.
And I think and I'm sure the applicant's fairly well versed in this as well, but on the Sanborn maps is originally a corner house, which that wraparound porch spoke to. If you look at the original Sanborn map, and then again, retaining the direct access from the street to that porch seems really important in terms of that character and style. But yes, the applicant could revise their application to fall within something that could be more in line with the guidelines. Yes.
So we're just gonna wait or come back next month on the new?
We could again defer the application if needed, if the applicant was open to that and to working with the staff for modifying the application. But what we have in front of us is a demolition of more than 50% of the exterior wall.
We are open, but I can tell you that 30 days would not be sufficient. Our architect.
Can we do 2 months?
I'm sorry?
Can you do 2 months? Is that fine? Because I'll change my motion if that's
Without
fine.
disclosing the health condition, I don't know the recovery time that's going to happen. So if I would just be allowed, if we have to pull it and then reapply.
Well, you can call and have it deferred further. My question for that one, if he even does 2 months and he's like, I have this issue, can I have another month? He can do that without coming to us. He can do that with you guys.
It would also be a different application that they would submit. even if we denied this application and they came back with another one. It's really up to the applicant in terms of, if we denied your application today, and you came back and tomorrow you go back and talk to your architect and say, actually, tell you what, we can work with them. We're going to put in a new application and modify the drawings to show, an addition in the back, whatever it may be, something totally different, but that fits with inside of the demolition and work with the staff, then that is just a new application. So we could defer it and hold this one open, or we could go ahead and vote and allow them.
I think a deferral, since this is at the, request of the applicant, it is, if you have a deferral, it's open-ended. It wouldn't necessarily need to have a timeline.
Okay, that's wonderful.
required.
Can I, do I have to do anything to pull back my motion, or nobody voted on this?
You can just withdraw your motion.
Can I
We have a-
withdraw my motion?
Thank you.
Compassion.
And with respect for time, I ask one more question, just as an
course.
element that
Please,
the
thank you.
inspector had pointed out. Thought that it would be much more appealing if that first level were bricked and not of that weatherboard stone, and I'm not sure if that's a proviso that's acceptable with this drawing.
That's something we could work with the staff on, but might be open to. So I guess the staff would need to look at it closely. I'm looking at that. Chase is shaking his head. Yes, we can. Let's look at it.
So we'll continue to work through Chase and just keep.
Yes, the staff is
that
your point here.
topic, and then our architect's health.
So how long do you think
Surgery was Monday and it was very invasive, so I can't speak to that. I don't
would
know.
you like to do 90 days?
That would be fine.
Okay, let's do 90 days.
All right,
Commissioner
can we make a
King.
motion to defer for 90 days? And I'm super excited about your brick. I think that sounds
Thank you.
awesome.
And again, thank you for working with us. As everyone knows, we have a very long docket today with a lot of demolitions too, but we really appreciate you being here and working with us on this. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor
I'll second.
for deferral for 90 days. Thank you. And Commissioner Bressler seconds. Is there any additional comment from commissioners? All those in favor? All those opposed? We will see you back here in 90 days. Best of luck and recovery to your architect, and thank you so much. All right, item D, 1515 UTURP. Is the applicant present?
That was withdrawn.
This is withdrawn. I'm sorry. Excellent. Moving on. Item E, 6028 Benjamin Street. Is the applicant present? Thank you for waiting so patiently. Please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Ian Taylor, 6028 Benjamin Street.
Thank you. To the staff, can you please make your presentation? I will hear the applicant's comments following.
This is an application for the demolition of more than 25% of the primary facade of a contributing rated two-story, two-family residential building. The demolition percentage and encapsulation is 64.8%. Based on FEMA survey research, 6028 Benjamin was constructed from 1925 to 1935 in the period of significance. However, the building doesn't show up on fire insurance maps until 1951. At that time, the dashed line of the front of the building denotes a two-story portion condition. The building has retained its form, massing, and details through preservation. The encapsulation of the front porches and alteration of the entry sequence would greatly impact the integrity of the well-maintained block face. Staff does not believe the alteration of the front elevation to be appropriate. Staff recommendation is the denial of the request of demolition of more than 25% of the primary facade, which the actual percentage is 64.8%.
Thank you. To the applicant, do you wish to address the commission?
Yes, please.
Okay, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thanks. So what we're trying to do is it's actually a two-story, two separate units, the top and the bottom. And we have been living, and I have my wife and two young boys, ages 9 and 7. We've been living in the bottom floor unit. And what we're seeking to do is convert it into a single family home and take the whole home over. We're not proposing changing the footprint at all, other than on the back side of it, there's an exterior staircase that we would enclose in. But on the front side, all we are really doing is changing the facade. And I wish my wife could be here today as well. She's actually sick, but she's done a deep dive into the history of this property. And as the staff, as Jesse said, the home, there's the house itself as it is doesn't show up on the fire insurance maps until I think in the 1950s. well, on the 1909 fire insurance map, it's that particular lot is not there. It was a old feed or sorry, nursery that encompassed 5 lots that are now all separated. We have a succession from 1920 where the entire combined 5, which are now the 5 lots, was passed. So it, although it doesn't say anything about the structures, I think a fair assumption is that at that point, there was still no structure on this particular lot, at least as it stands today. The first evidence of there being a home on this particular lot is a survey from 1942, at which point the lot and the lot next to us, if in one of the prior pictures, what was then existing. The home that's next to us does not have porches the way that we had it. And when we bought the home, those porches were actually screened in. And I have a picture. So
2 minutes.
the house
You can
looks a
wrap up your
lot.
comments.
The
Sorry.
house looks a lot better now than it did when we bought it. And so in closing those porches, really, I think we're actually creating a facade that's more consistent with the other homes, both on the block and in the neighborhood, which I also have photos of. So we're not changing the integrity of the house at all. We're really just changing the facade, which again, I think would be more consistent with other homes in the neighborhood.
Thank you. So this, just as a reminder, the Historic District Landmarks Commission has purview over what you see from the street. And so the exterior facade is really what we look at quite a bit. So while it may not seem like you're changing the integrity of the home, you're actually drastically changing the facade of this house. And it's very evident in the drawings that were submitted. I would also like to just clarify, it sounds like your wife is a very good researcher, although I know the staff is too. And if she's interested in a historic job, maybe wants to apply. But yes, so the staff's report is stating that this, based on the FEMA survey research, this home was constructed from 1925 to 1935 in the period of significance and doesn't show up until 1951, which is not uncommon. For those who look at the Sanborn maps, they're often taped over and kind of mapped, but amended over the years. I don't know whether they ran out of money between 30 and 50 when they reissued them, but this is not uncommon. And so the staff's historic research is stating that your home is from 1925 to 1935 originally. I don't know if the staff has any additional information on that.
So this was actually a question that I brought up to one of our historians, and I do have it in the email, because my question is like kind of like you said, why is there a gap, in Sanborn maps? And so there is some research that we did of why there is a gap. I can't explain necessarily this, but as far as the FEMA research, it dates it from 1925 to 1935, which is generally accurate.
Yeah, and I personally do a lot of research as well on Sanborn maps. I do know that between 30 and 50, they're often taped over and amended, and they're not full copies that were issued, but I don't know in terms of this particular map and would, again, defer to the staff on that. So again, just want to clarify that as we start to have this conversation, but I think, again, your home is in a partial historic district. We only have purview over the demolition component, not what goes back in its place. Typically, when you're in a full control district, there's also a process that goes through the Architectural Review Committee, and they also have review of the new facade that goes back. So on this one, again, for commissioners, we're just looking at the demolition. We had one similar to this recently, although it was sort of debatable about enclosing porches or not enclosing porches uptown as well in that same district. I will say the staff did a really great job of highlighting. If you scroll down in there, it just sort of highlights exactly the area that's talked about in terms of enclosing and changing the facade. So again, I can't make a motion. I would agree with the staff's recommendation. This is in the Uptown District. Commissioner Bruno, do you have thoughts on this item?
I think somebody else better speak about this than me.
I had a question.
Sure, Commissioner
The
Breslin.
owner, is there a way to convert this from a 2-family to a 1-family house without changing the facade?
Well, I mean, yes, I think there's a way to do it, but it would certainly be going back to the drawing board a little bit.
Is there a way to do it where you disturb less of the facade?
Certainly, I think it's something that we could work with the staff on.
Okay, that sounds good.
Would you like a deferral also to come back with something at 24% or lower?
Well, I guess maybe if we had some time to look at it and see if we could come up with something, at least that's
I mean,
closer to
does the
that.
staff feel like that's a doable solution to convert it without as much facade demolition?
There was an initial recommendation when this was initially reviewed to utilize the front porch and the existing entry at that location for that purpose. To your wife, my apologies, I forget her name. But they wanted to proceed with this, so there was that discussion.
I mean, this is a drastic change. And again, we're only reviewing the facade change itself and the portion of the historic fabric, but even in this is just a very drastic change and appears, given you're going from a 2-family residence to a single, that it's maybe partially aesthetic, just given its drastic facade change, and maybe partially from programming. So I guess the question is to the applicant, do you want to do a deferral on this and see if you can come back and work within the guidelines for something that the staff can recommend for approval?
Yeah, if we could have a 30-day deferral, I think that would give us enough
Okay.
time to
I think that's great.
consider other options.
Commissioner Bruno.
I'd like to move that we defer this matter for 30 days.
And one question, is there any public comment on this application? No public comment. Okay. We have a motion on the floor in a second. All those in favor? All those opposed, the motion carries unanimously. We will see you back here in 30 days. And again, thank you for being willing to work with the staff.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Item F, 819 Belleville Street. Is the applicant present? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, Zach Smith Consulting, 530 South Norman C. Francis.
Thank you.
This is an application for the demolition of contributing rated 1-story 2-family residential building to grade in full control Algiers Point. 819 Belleville Street is a contributing rated building in the Algiers Historic District, and although the date of construction is unclear, Sanborn map research history indicates that a similar building in size and shape did occupy the site as early as 1896. Currently, the residence does not exhibit many character defining features that it might have once had. Consequently, the building only adds to the two ensemble of the area in maintaining its form, size, and location within the surrounding block. Prior to the request for demolition, an HDLC C of A was issued for construction of a rear addition, and construction had begun on that portion of the building. Throughout the building's history, a number of unsympathetic alterations have taken place, and the current iteration of the building includes a highly altered front facade with aluminum and vinyl replacement windows, inappropriate exterior doors, and vinyl siding. And overall, the only aesthetic interest of the building is, again, its size, form, and location. HDLC Inspector Alex Nassar performed an interior inspection of the building, exterior and interior inspection of the building on February 23rd, 2023. And I'll summarize with the quote from that inspection. Quote, overall, the original part of the building is in poor condition and shows signs of extreme neglect and active removal of any salvageable building elements. There is no significant evidence of wood destroying insects or water intrusion damage to the original part of the structure. However, the rear addition is collapsing and should be removed immediately. Renovation of the building would be costly, and historically contributing portions of the building outside of its footprint and form no longer exist, end quote. The present condition of the building highlights significant structural damage as well as the absence of character defining features or historic material. Damage at the rear of the building is currently impacting the main core of the building. And based on the finding of the inspection report, staff has no objection to full demolition provided that the redevelopment plan be submitted prior. Because the building is located in a full control district, the redevelopment will require HDLC ARC review and approval. So staff has no objection to the demolition contingent on this process of redevelopment.
Thank you. So the applicant, do you wish to address the commission?
Yes, please. Wanted to thank the staff, especially the inspection crew, for working with us on this project. I think they've seen it, and you see in the report that there's overall agreement in demolishing this entire building. At this point, though, the one kind of request we love for modified kind of approval is to remove the condition at this time for redevelopment plans to be submitted in order to demolish this building. If you see that picture from the back, you can see on the right, this building actually sustained some additional damage during that tornado in Algiers before Christmas. Based on what everybody can see, the folks that got permission from this board, from this commission earlier, were following the plans. There was no intentional kind of demolition, et cetera. This building is in a very precarious place. The wood that you see on the back was put just to try and keep any additional continued destruction and falling in on itself, as we knew that this process needed to take place. And knowing that this is a full control district, and this is, if not an IDC, very, very, very close to an IDC, we would love to see that requirement for redevelopment be taken out, knowing that we will have to come to this board when a new structure get done. Related to it potentially staying an empty lot, the owners of this property bought this property to redevelop it and fully intend to build on this lot. So there's no intention of having some sort of in perpetuity vacant lot.
Okay, thank you. This is in the Algiers district. We don't have that commissioner present today. The staff is recommending approval of the demolition. We do often not allow demolition without, having those plans in place, just to ensure that something else is going to go back in its place. But I'll leave that up to the commissioners. Commissioner Bressler.
What is the time frame that the current requirement would be for redevelopment?
We don't have one
We
in
can't.
place. Like we said, typically we require redevelopment plans prior unless it's in imminent danger of collapse situation. So that would be up to the.
And
So for the applicant, you're just asking for approval without redevelopment plans right now, or I'm not sure what you're asking on the timing.
So essentially the approval for the demo without the condition of those plans, so that this building can essentially be torn down in the next 10 to 15 days. It's my personal and professional opinion that this building to play out for the next 45, 60 to 90 days to work with staff and continue to develop plans. For obvious reasons, the owners of this property never intended to be in this situation. They went through the full process for that rear addition. So they're kind of a little flat-footed on this without having those plans in the works.
Right.
They have engaged us to do those plans, and we are actively working on those. But the potential 60, 90, 120 days, I don't think is in the best interest of the safety based on the continued collapsing.
When do you think you could have plans available?
I think we could have plans for submission to this agency in the next 60 days.
But if we remove just as a clarification, if you remove the caveat off of this motion, there is nothing that can require those plans to be in within 60 days. So if it's removed, they will submit on their timeline at whichever, no matter what is said today. No offense to the applicant, but that's how this will move forward.
We can't approve it subject to the.
No,
submission?
because that would be the same as saying that you would require redevelopment plans to be submitted.
Well, we are, but just usually they're required as of today, but we're saying in 60 days.
He wants you to waive it 100%.
Right. Well, I'm saying, I think everyone's uncomfortable with an open-ended, but if there's a timeline that's longer than what it currently is, that might be more acceptable.
There's just no way to enforce.
There's no way to
Once
enforce,
the
yeah.
building's gone, it's gone, and then they need to take it down apparently immediately. So there would be no mechanism for us to enforce it if they didn't provide those plans within 60 days.
Is the original portion of the building, the cottage portion, is it in danger of collapse, or is it just that rear part?
Does seem to be affecting the left side wall if you're looking at it from the street. But that would be more of a question for the inspector.
We look, again, this one is application for demolition. The staff does not have an objection on it. I will say in this case, I know we don't often approve without demolition plans in place. It does seem like this one has redevelopment plans in place. Thank you. This one does seem to have some issue. I will say often when we see them this one's between two houses, it seems like it would be a lot between two. So to me, in this case, I think that is a reasonable exception, but we cannot mandate in terms of a deadline. That complicates it for the staff, for the city, and is not anything that we can enforce. Commissioner Hackenberg.
Yeah, I just as clarification, typically the demolition permit would not be issued until the building permit for the redevelopment is typically how it works, but yeah, and looking at the photos and the condition of that rear addition, I tend to think this may be one exception, particularly as it's already February. We're starting to get closer to hurricane season. So I would make a motion to approve the demolition without the redevelopment plan.
Thank you, Commissioner Hackenberg.
As a non-precedent setting motion.
Commissioner Love seconds. Is there any additional public comment on this application? No public comment. All those in favor? All those opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck with your project. All right, item G, 7417 Birth Street. Is the applicant present?
Yeah.
Welcome back. Is this the third or fourth one third today?
Technically the fifth, but the third with, that's not on the consent. agenda.
Wonderful. Okay.
Zach Smith,
You seem to like demolition.
you know, the phone just keeps ringing. Zach Smith Consulting, 530 South Norman C. Francis.
Thank you. The staff will make their presentation and we'll hear comments following.
This is an application for demolition of more than 50% of the exterior wall structure for renovation and construction of a new addition at a contributing rated 1-story, 3-family residential building. 2-story. Oh, 2-story.
2-story.
This multifamily balloon frame home was constructed between 1909 and 1951, according to Sanborn maps, and its date of construction was estimated by FEMA as being between 1920 and 1930. The style is an example of a transitional period in architecture, displaying a mix of both classical revival and craftsman styles. The original facade has been altered and the second-story porch has been enclosed, yet the building retains its massing and some historic elemental details, such as its chimneys and porch columns. The HDLC inspector confirmed that although there is some damage to the frame of the structure, typical of homes of this age, the home is not in imminent danger of collapse. There is evidence of termite damage in the wall system, particularly at the wall plates. Some substandard contemporary framing will need to be corrected to meet building code. Some headers were undersized at window openings and studs were missing around chimneys. After the HDLC inspector reviewed the property with the contractor, it was determined that the new vertical members could be sistered into existing framing in most cases, and significant portions of the existing framing would not need to be removed to render the wall system competent. The floor system will likely require significant work. There are some low areas in the floor system where joists have rotted or where foundation piers have settled dramatically. There was also evidence of rot and termite damage in the sill. Visible joists appeared to be in good condition and could be sistered to render the floor system competent. This is typical for a pier and beam foundation of this age in New Orleans. Upon conferring with the inspector, it is of staff's opinion that the degree of proposed demolition is not necessary to bring the home back to use. As opposed to reframing as required, the top plates and sill should be replaced and new framing should be sistered. The structure could be restored without nearing the HDLC's threshold for demolition. The overall staff recommendation would be denial of partial demolition as proposed.
Thank you. To the applicant, do you wish to address the commission?
Yes, please. I'm Owen Sketchler with Zach Smith Consulting.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Owen Sketchler, 530 South Norman C. Francis. So on this project, we had an owner who wanted to add a little bit footprint to the back of the building, and we did our initial studies and determined that we could keep this around 40%, even considering the windows and everything. However, once we got a structural engineer involved and they did some selective demo, we found a lot of termite damage, which you can see on the first floor in those calculations there. The yellow hatch at the first floor basically grew this demo region from what was 40% to near 70 because of the extent of the stud damage. However, we would have loved to consider sistering and just replacing framing 1-for-1 or, side-by-side framing, but we're unsure what the condition of these studs will be when they actually peel off this facade. We're worried that a lot of these studs will basically disintegrate or could have water damage that we didn't expect. And we're just concerned that even if we try to keep this thing under 50%, it may exceed it during the demo process.
If I may, when we were reviewing this at the staff level, excuse me, one of the things that we were concerned with, we do this a lot, and we understand that a lot of these properties are termite ridden, that there is rot that is unexpected. But the way the proposal was presented was sort of demo and replace as needed. And that was way too open-ended for the comfort level of the staff. It isn't that we have issue with this work and we welcome this work, but I think that one of the things that would make this process for this building go smoother is a deferral so that they could be more granular with their proposal and say exactly which areas, they can see right now that need to be replaced or removed, with the caveat that we do understand that when you get on site, there may need to be additional work. But that way it keeps us involved instead of us signing off on something just sort of as needed, which we have found is a very, very dangerous place to go.
And just as a reminder to the commission, this is in a partial district, so the only thing we have control over is demolition. So even if additional demolition is, this could change. So again, we do not have review over the new construction that goes back. Commissioner Bressler.
I had a question. So I guess you're saying you don't want to give a carte blanche as needed. One way would be defer and work things out and come back next month. Would another way be to approve it for demolition as approved by the staff, so that when the hidden damage is uncovered, you could go and approve it at that point?
Well, I would.
Not with, no.
Yeah, that's a little, I would rather still come back. It depends. Obviously, if it's something that, obviously it's completely decomposed and there's a small wall section, that's one thing, but
we want to make sure with all applicants that we have absolute clarity on partial demolitions. And again, this applicant especially has been here often and is very well versed in this. And we feel very confident in 30 days with a deferral could work this out with the staff, could work this out to a proposal.
No one knows what's behind, what's hidden. So, but we're not willing to, or may not be willing to give you all permission to do whatever you find. I think people feel more comfortable knowing what's what and approving based on full information.
If I may, and I appreciate those comments, Commissioner Bressler. And respectfully, we would appreciate this, for especially I know that for all the people watching at home who see these things, I've obviously represented some folks that have been on the bad end of this, where they expect a small amount and then it balloons as it goes. In this particular case, there's serious issue where we do fully expect that this is going to exceed 50%. Principally, fundamentally, I do have an issue generally of saying, let's sister something where we basically entomb bad wood in a wall. I would love a conversation to some degree on that. I think leaving old damaged wood of any sort that obviously is not intended in a wall just to keep under 50% is not exactly the best path forward. But related to this, we do expect that as we start to peel off the skin, which of course does not contribute to the definition, that again, we would potentially have to just set up cameras to watch ourselves peel this off to make sure that there's that referee. We do not want to be in a situation, Commission, where we come and say, hey, we're going to do 49%. We magically change this number to be under, which you guys have seen again and again and again. We professionally believe that when we disassemble that exterior skin, which is in terrible, terrible shape, that it's going to cause many of these structural existing studs that we can only see the damage from the inside, not from the weather side, that it's going to start to disintegrate. So while I understand a 30-day deferrals, I'm not sure what we're going to be able to investigate in the next 30 days until we peel back that skin. So I completely understand the position of the staff, but I think we're kind of in that cart, in that horse, where we have a group that's asking ahead of time. And I get the kind of blanket statement, but a 1-for-1, as where we're not clear cutting this building down. The second floor is staying up there. This is all the structure that we absolutely have to. I would love to not be here.
I'm also going to chime in to get Commissioner Hackenberg's perspective on this too. But again, in our partial districts, we only have control over the demolition, and we do not want to set a precedent case where anyone's drawings are lacking in detail, and to the point that the staff does not feel comfortable that they understand how much demolition or potentially experience in demolition work and historic work in the city. And so the staff is recommending that there's 30 days to clarify your application because of the lack of detail and information.
And that's kind of the point, is that we believe that there are going to be studs which we cannot fully assess until the exterior skin's off. So if we, yes, sir.
Commissioner King.
From your, again, from your perspective, your opinion in terms of professionalness, if you peeled it all back without sistering or out holding it, it would just fall over anyway, right? Because you're saying you just turn them out, this deteriorate, it's gonna happen, so.
Commissioner King, I'm going to ask Commissioner Hackenberg to respond to that, who's an architect on this commission as well. I understood, and as someone who's doing to the applicant, the applicant's here representing an application that's in favor of demolition, and I'm not sure that we can always trust that professional opinion on this platform. Yes, Zach, you're fully aware. And so, it has been up here numerous times on numerous items that are all have staff recommendations for denial today. And so Commissioner Hackenberg, please, do you mind explaining to Commissioner King how that works in terms of demolition and sistering?
When you uncover damage in the walls, in some cases, it can be very limited to a couple of studs. In which case you can sometimes come in with an additional stud next, as long as the plates and supports at the top of the bottom, you add an additional stud that then carries the load, but the original stud stays in place. It means you don't have to take the exterior skin off. It allows you to do different things. You run into a very extremely damaged section and you're probably just going to want to replace all of the studs along the way. So there's various levels of how much gets replaced, how much gets sistered. It's sort of you take it a stud by stud, section of the wall by section of the wall. In a case like this, where we're just giving permission to replace whatever they find, I'm really uncomfortable with that. I think the staff is. And, you know, as an architect, I would do my best to estimate what I know and can see is damaged and indicate that on the plans. And like we often say, if additional damage is discovered during construction, they contact the staff inspector will go out and look at the work and we can move on from there.
There has to be, and as we've seen, there's a willingness from the applicant to also abide by that, right? We've also seen a number of demolitions that have accidentally happened in front of us. And again, as a reminder to everyone at home, our fines for demolition have increased significantly. And whoever you really don't want to be back here in front of us with additional fines for demolition now. And really that is part of that conversation, is because things were accidentally falling over and $10,000 was not enough. But this project also has the benefit that there's already been preliminary interior demolition and they can see all of the studs. So the argument that they really can't see behind the wall or don't know how things are going to behave seems like a very weak argument in this particular case. And I just want to remind that to commissioners, a lot of the projects we look at and we don't have the benefit of full exploratory demolition in advance. This, again, we have a number of items on the docket today. I think we've heard from the applicant, and this is in the Carrollton district. The staff is suggesting a 30-day deferral to work with the applicant on this application.
Can I just point out that we did our due diligence to get out there and estimate, and our estimates were that 70% number, which the commission seemed to calculate it as well based on our drawings. But I think the argument is, you know, we're not saying we don't know it's there. We're saying that we don't think that many of these studs are salvageable, and we can sister them, but the structural engineer doesn't trust the studs, especially once we remove these weatherboards that are water damaged, termite damaged, and the stucco facade itself. So
I just had a question for staff.
Mm-hmm.
So what will happen during these 30 days? So that when you come back next month, we'll be able to say that we think that, you know, they need this amount of demolition or under the limit.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we can, you know, be a little bit more granular and obviously not be requesting that the as needed clause be in the drawings, and we can really, you know, fine tune exactly which areas are specifically, you know, needing to come down and which ones can remain. Because right now it's just too vague.
Are we looking to identify every stud that's damaged? Do you want a diagram on the elevation that shows every stud that has damage?
No, obviously not.
I mean, we were willing, and I said this before we submitted our drawings, to change the notes as such to say new top plates, sister all framing is required. Due to termite damage, but we were advised against it. And so we sit here now. But we would be happy to not be at this meeting, as we said, and have left the studs and sister, but we didn't want to be forced to leave, termite ridden wood in the building to stay under a threshold.
It is, and just for those viewing at home, it is perfectly acceptable to have termite damaged wood that is sistered in your building. And that happens all the time. The French Quarter, this is not allowed to pull off full sides of the building. This is.
Sure. Yeah.
So
And there's,
again, there's a willingness of the applicant to work with the staff
Yes.
to either identify the information or not. And that's what this commission, we have a very long docket of items.
sure.
And the idea that you're not going to work with the staff and you're going to push this through and then move on is really frustrating. And I'll say that to Zach too. We see you a number of times. We see them when they fall over. We ask for the respect to work with the staff and try to come to a conclusion on this with professional guidance and care. That is very frustrating when you get up here to push it through.
Oh, we're not trying to push it through. I'm just saying that we were willing to modify our notes into sister. It wasn't a matter of push it through. It was
30-day deferral is, commissioners, the only way to take the floor on this and move this forward is to make a decision, put a motion on the floor in a second, and we move forward. We either have the staff's recommendation is denial of a partial demolition as proposed.
Do we have more comments?
And public comment, I'm sorry. And public comment. Susan. Forgive me, we have a very long docket of items and we need to start kind of cranking through these a little bit.
Susan Johnson, 2822 LePage Street. I am not paid to be here. I want to point out the social problems with this development because it's part of this landscape that's been going on 3 years, 4 years, doubles to dorms, university, private dormification near Tulane University. This house is not owned by LeBorn LLC any longer. It's owned by an LLC called Le Bon Temps Ventures. It's their 4th acquisition in the neighborhood to date. And I say acquisition financial language because it's a company there that's commercializing our properties. And they have plunked down 5.5 million over the past 3 years for 4 of our buildings. More purchases are expected, including the 17-unit Art Deco style apartment building across the street from this one. Where is all this money coming from? Especially those 2 purchases totaling over 4 million within 2 weeks in early March 2022. One of the members of this LLC is a venture capitalist who apparently made a lot of money with Lucid Technologies, the big tech unicorn first unicorn in New Orleans, sold for $1.1 billion to a Swedish company in October 2021. And so why do we have these venture capitalists in our midst who are interested in our once modest neighborhood? Well, they want to develop these houses as lucrative student rentals, $2,000 a bedroom. My family lived across the street from this house.
Please wrap up your comments.
I know this property does not have 8 bedrooms in it. They're expanding from 6 to 12, not 8 to 12. On either side of this building, you've got owner occupants, senior citizens.
Ms. Johnson, please
We
wrap up
all
your
came
comments.
back
It's 2
after
minutes.
Katrina, why are we, this is a notorious party house. What's going to happen?
We appreciate
now?
your comments. We're at 2 minutes.
Yes.
Please conclude and
My
keep it.
conclusion is there's no active sale on file for this building or any of the other buildings. Why is that? Who is James Spalt, who's named on the plans as owner? He is not on the LLC registration. He's not on the active sale that I got from land records because Safety and Permits doesn't have a record of the owners of these buildings. So stop being so flipping mysterious.
Thank you for your comment. Is there any additional public comment? And to the commission, I'm hoping there is a motion.
Make a motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Bressler.
I mean, I certainly understand your point that you think you're ready to go, but I mean, the staff thinks they can accomplish something in 30 days and come back with something more definitive that includes a recommendation. I think that would be better for everyone's sake. And so I suggest we defer this one meeting so that you can work with the staff, come back with something more specific, and that we can be easier for us to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Bressler. Is there a second to that motion? Commissioner Hackenberg, thank you. And we really appreciate the applicant being willing to work with the staff for 30 days. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries. We'll see you back here in 30 days. Thank you. All right, moving on. Item H for Newcomb Boulevard. Please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Michael Carbine, 911 Constantinople, New Orleans.
Matt Fox, 911 Constantinople.
And we both are with M Carbine Restoration.
Thank you. The staff will make their presentation and we'll hear your comments following.
This is an application for the demolition of more than 25% of the primary facade and more than 50% of the roof structure of the contributing rated two-story raised basement single-family building. Based on FEMA survey and Friends of the Cabildo research, Fort Newcomb was designed by Morgan Height Research Below and built in 1920 within the period of significance for the Uptown Historic District. The raised basement serves as a plinth for the classical pilasters and styling of the building. However, the primary facade of the building was altered sometime after 1950 when the front porch was encapsulated with the creation of an interior foyer. The two hip roofs flanking the exterior entry porch were encased with a parapet wall. Despite the attempt at the restoration at the front elevation, staff does not believe lowering the building and altering the entry sequence to be appropriate for the scale and rhythm of Newcomb Boulevard. Staff recommendation is denial of the request of demolition of more than 25% of the primary facade and more than 50% of the roof structure.
Thank you. To the applicant, this is what a special building. Do you wish to address the commission?
Hands up there.
Oh, please speak into the mic for
Matt
us.
Fox with Carbine Restorations. So these plans aren't the right ones. We have revised the proposed drawings to kind of like mimic the existing building more, or maintain the appearance of the existing building more. So similar to that project before, we have the raised basement where the ceiling is only 7 feet high.
They're both there.
Yeah, the ceiling is only 7 feet high. So we're proposing lowering the main floor down to 3 feet above the curb. And then the client wants to add a second story. So we're trying to maintain the same sort of central massing, but adapting it to fit the floor plan that the client desires.
Great. So you probably heard from the previous application as well. We rewrote the definition of demolition for exact cases like this. Okay. All right. Just making sure you were listening to that too. This building is a really special building. I actually go by this building pretty often. It also has a really unique history that I think the staff researched and put into the report as well. It was originally constructed in, 1925 for 1920. But yeah, it's a very interesting character building. On this one, I don't have much more to say than what we've heard on some of the previous applications where, again, we revised the definition of demolition to keep projects from this completely altering the fabric of the facade and raising it, it significantly. I guess the question is, have you worked with the staff to see if you can fit within the percentages that are allowed?
The problem is adding a second floor changes the roof. We're trying to mimic the existing roof by raising it up, but we'd have to demo it to build it again at a higher point. So there's a handful of different things we're trying to go for. One is editing the front elevation. One is changing the roof or raising the roof. And then the other one would be lowering the house. So, I mean, it's kind of a threefold.
Understood. So fundamentally, the project itself is a much larger project than would allow by the partial demolition.
Right.
Yes, to staff.
Part of the staff's concern is that what's being proposed requires so much demolition that very, very, very little of the original building will remain once this project is completed. So if the commission were to consider demolition, I think, you know, demolition and all new construction of a building that makes sense from a, you know, a design standpoint would be preferable to altering the building to this extent in this way.
Understood, and thank you. Is there any additional public comment on this application? No additional public comment. Any comment from commissioners? Commissioner Bressler?
Could you just repeat what you just said? I mean, you're more in favor of, no.
I'm not advocating demolition. I believe that this building could be, you know, we have the original drawings and it still has a lot of integrity left and could be restored based on the original drawings. And that's, you know, 100% our position. But I think what's concerning is when we get applications that in order to appease the preservation community, they ask for a partial demolition, which is really basically almost a full demolition. But the end product is sort of a Frankenstein type of building that no one would design from the ground up in an attempt to save portions of a structure. And, you know, our feeling is from a design standpoint that that's not appropriate. And if the commission were to consider demolition of this building, it should be, you know, demolition of the entire building rather than allowing this kind of alteration to happen to it, because this is essentially a demolition. Nothing will be left.
Commissioner Hackenberg?
Yeah, I tend to agree that this is altered the structure and the additions. It just kind of, I think Frankenstein's monster was a fairly good description. There's so many things going on that don't relate. I would prefer, and I don't speak for the staff or anybody but myself, if you wanted to do a second floor addition, push it to the rear and do a little more of a restoration of the original facade would be, you know, far more palatable. But I just think this is taking it just, I'd rather see, I wouldn't rather see a full demolition, but I think the extent of the changes to this, that's almost what's happening.
I completely agree, Commissioner Hackenberg. Thank you for your comments. Is there an additional, do you wish to address the commission? Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Peter Laborde. I'm the owner of the house. I grew up in this house. My mother made some design changes in the early 60s, which is what we're taking away and putting the house back into its original position. The reason to lower the house is to make the house more ADA accessible. My father died in this house. He died in the basement about a year ago because we could not get him up the stairs. So with me getting older and my wife and I wanting to die in the house, we're asking to lower the house to make it so we don't have to put an elevator, because an elevator didn't fit in this house originally. When my father was in it, we looked at it 10 different ways and we couldn't get one in. So the idea was to lower the house because the basement is a basement and the ceiling, it wouldn't even be approved in today's world. So the best idea is to lower it so we don't have to put an elevator and we can make it ramp proof to get into the house as we get older.
And this commission,
we're putting the columns back in, which were originally there prior to my mother making a change back in the 60s. We're changing the stairway to where it used to come down the center line. We're just moving it over to the right. So we're actually going back to what it was originally than it is as it sits today.
and I think are you referring to the blueprint that's scanned in the photo? Because I think if we put them side by side, we're not exactly back to what it was today originally. I guess I would say that this commission would be open to entertaining, I think, given your interest in a more accessible entry or a way to do that. It's just that plus the roof demolition plus the rework is far in excess of the partial demolition. And is, I don't know if you're in the room when this was said, but is essentially a full demolition request.
But I'm taking away what was put there in the sixties. So it's not part of the original architecture of the house. It's going back to where it was prior to that renovation. The decking in the center where the grill is, where the grating is, that was the entrance, and it was a porch. So we're going back to the porch. There were two exits that came out.
Wait, can you? Use the mic, please.
I'm sorry, but in fairness, it's going back to original of it. It's not the exact same. I mean, I get there's interpretations, but I understand what you're saying. And I understand
All
being
it
mad
is
at your,
moving
you
the
know,
stairs to the right.
well, and that's different though, right?
Well, yeah, that's different, but
Well, so it's not the exact same.
theoretically,
That's all.
in proportion and in percentages, it's nominal. And other than lowering the house.
Yes, but it's not the same. And I think that's what they're more clarifying, and because they are very different looking. And I think people, if you looked at this picture, they'd have a different reaction than the other one, because this is a gorgeous picture, correct? I mean, I'm sure that's why you want it. But so that's just, I mean, we're just interpretation.
Again,
That's what we are.
We have control over partial demolition requests. And again, we do see a number of them where the partial demolition is essentially a full demolition request, which we do see in Uptown as well. We've heard a number of them today.
So were we better knocking it down?
No, I mean,
No.
this commission would prefer that you renovate it and work within the guidelines and work with the staff so that you're actually not here requesting something that is we don't support.
We have to lower the house. I mean, that is almost a necessity. Because I can't get in the house once I get too old.
So as we've asked with other
I
applicants
grew up
today
here.
is,
This is
un-
a house I'm.
we're
been
so,
in
and we
since-
appreciate that you've been in it, that it's been in your family for so long, you're maintaining it, you're investing in it now. Would you be willing to work with, I'm not sure. I mean, again, I do think it's not just lowering it, which again, if that was just the request is an alteration to that front portion. This commission and that percentage is not what's in front of us today. It's that plus roof plus increased floor area on the second floor. Right? So it's a full renovation and
Let me-
more
you
than
see those
50%
columns
demolition.
On the top of that used to be a bedroom. It's no longer a bed, that's just one large room with 60, 70-foot ceilings. So it's been modified for years. And that was prior to us buying the house in the 50s.
Absolutely. And what, I guess to the staff, what year did Uptown become a partial district?
2017.
2017. And I guess the question is, why did it become a partial district?
To prevent demolitions of contributing rated buildings, because there was so much speculative interest in the area to build new homes.
Thank you. Commissioner Bruno, this is in your district. Do you want to take the mic for a minute? And do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, I don't think so. No questions for the applicant.
Do you, well, first, let me ask, is there any public comment on this application? Commissioner Bruno, do you want to propose a motion? This is in your district.
I move that we support the staff's recommendation in this situation.
And do you mind providing a few details as to why?
Because I agree that the extent of the changes that are to be made, that are proposed to be made, would really lose so much of the historic fabric as to render the house unhistoric.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion? Commissioner Green, seconds. Is there any additional comment from any commissioners?
I guess I was going to ask.
Nope, there's the motion on the floor in a second. I have a long agenda today. Is there any comment to other commissioners?
I just was curious whether a deferral would make sense on this.
We have a motion on the floor. And to the applicant, I mean, no, all those in favor? All those opposed?
The chairman would have to vote with the majority.
Yeah, I vote with the majority. As I always do. Okay. Your application has been denied by the HDLC Commission and you have 10 calendar days from the date of this meeting to appeal to the City Council in writing. The staff will furnish you with the details of this appeals process. Thank you and good luck with your project. Thank you. All right. All right, moving on. Next one. Item I, 7224 Dominican Street. Is the applicant present?
Yeah, Jack Sawyer, SQD Measurable Architects, 365 Canal Street.
Thank you. The staff will make their presentation and we'll hear your comments following.
This is an application for the demolition of more than 50% of the exterior wall of a structure at a non-contributing 3-story education building. Based on FEMA survey research, 7224 Dominican Street was constructed from 1960 to 1970, outside of the period of significance for the Uptown Historic District. The 3-story building is designed in the international style, which was prevalent in the mid-20th century. Flat pitched roofs with strong horizontal fenestration lines proliferated the style. Metal curtain walls with punches of glass are indicative hallmark to the building's style's vocabulary. Much like the expansive growth during the Restoration period, the architecture created in the modernist style in the mid-20th century was a signal of change and growth for the future. While this style is not a hallmark of classic New Orleans style architecture, it is in fact recognized around the world. The building's delicate aluminum framework appears to be in relatively good condition, with adjacent opaque panels in fair to good condition. This building is not in full control, but any alterations to the materiality of the facades would change the language and history of this building with reference to its historical context. For this reason, staff cannot recommend the demolition of more than 50% of the exterior wall framing. Staff recommendation is denial of demolition of more than 50% of the exterior wall framing.
To the applicant, do you wish to address the commission?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
So our intent is to save the building. It is a partial control district, and as the staff alluded to, it's not a contributing element. We are trying to save the building. Our intent was to save the facade as well. It's where we started. However, we ran into a technical complication around getting a building permit. The facade does not meet the energy code. It does not meet impact resistance. This is a substantial renovation. Even if we didn't try to fix the facade and just tried to fix the air conditioning and the plumbing and everything else, we'd be over the 50% mark, meaning that we would then have to bring the facade up to code. So if the commission denies the request, we would be effectively stuck between agencies, and not city agencies either, stuck between the city and the state fire marshal on the energy code review. So a denial of demolition of the facade actually puts the project in peril to where it can't move forward. It can't renovate the building at all. Please hear my case. Really appreciate some leniency on this, just trying to do the right thing, get the building back into commerce. And if I need to defer and work with staff, I'm happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Clearly the applicant has been listening to the other applications earlier today that were also had staff recommendations for denial. Thank you. I think this one is I will say this one is a tricky one in that we come across these in terms of when they're wholesale replacements of the glass. Has there been consideration, I guess, for the applicant and to the staff? Has there been consideration for keeping a bit more of the masonry? I can't tell from the exact percentages, but keeping more of the historic fabric and then coming back. Is it, I guess, is the new design a full similar look, or is it a?
It is. The intent is to pull the skin off completely and replace it completely so we can get a weather-tight envelope. It leaks like a sieve now, including the brick area. But if that's a compromise that I can work with staff on, I'm happy to consider it.
Okay. I think the concern on this one is it's, again, you've seen the other applications that have come in front of us. A number of them do have a bit more in terms of renovation drawings that come with those applications. So if you could work with the staff just to see and provide those in terms of knowing if it's similar in intent when it goes back, that might also help this commission review this application.
Happy to do it.
Okay. This is I don't know, Commissioner Bruno, this is in your district.
I move that we
I have public comment, so I do need to call. I do have that, but okay. Is there any, I do have one public comment card. Louis Zeravon, are you here? Probably left because it's so warm in here and it's been a very long meeting. Okay, Commissioner Bruno, any additional public comment? No additional public comment, Commissioner Bruno?
I move that we defer this item for a month to allow the applicant to work with the staff to see if there's a way to accommodate what he needs to do.
To the staff, okay. There's a motion on the floor. There's a second by Commissioner Clark. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We'll see you in 30 days. Thank you.
Very much.
Item J, 3705 Chestnut Street. This item has been withdrawn. Old business retention applications, item A, 1437 St. Andrew Street. Is the applicant present? And Commissioner Hackenberg needs to recuse himself from this item.
Yes, I was the architect of record on the project.
Thank you. To the, am I here? 1437 St. Andrew. So the applicant, please state your name and address for the record.
Nicole Weber, Weber Consulting, 2131 Bienville Street, New Orleans, 70112.
Thank you. The staff will make their presentation and we'll hear comments following.
This is the application for the retention of tile cladding on front stairs at a contributing rated raised basement multifamily residential building without a certificate of appropriateness. 2 C of As were issued for this 1437 St. Andrew, one in 2017 and one in 2020. Both expired due to inactivity. A follow-up inspection for the potential continuation of demolition by neglect was conducted in September of 2022. At that time, it was noted that the inappropriate pocked stone tile had been installed on top of the risers and treads, the building's front staircase. Buildings of this style and age would originally have unclad masonry or concrete stairs. Decorative tile would have never historically been part of the porch finish. Staff worked with the applicant to abate other violations and deviation of C of A and working without a C of A with the proviso that the stair cladding and inappropriate light fixtures would be changed. Staff also does not feel it is appropriate to embellish the concrete deck, which in itself is not historically appropriate material. As there are many existing concrete porches in the historic district, staff is concerned about setting a precedent of installing decorative tiles on porches where there's no evidence that had previously existed. Staff recommends the denial of the retention of the application.
Thank you. To the applicant, do you wish to address the commission? This is in the Lower Garden District. Full control.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Nicole Weber. So I wanted to address precedent, the concern that the staff has about this setting precedent to allow for the retention of the stone cladding. Not only did NPS, the National Park Service, as well as the State Historic Preservation Office approve the renovation and the historic tax credits, but specifically, and this is noted in the report, the consultant for the historic tax credits also consulted with both departments specifically on the stairs and asked if they had any concerns. And they did not. They said that they felt that it was historically that the renovations were historically appropriate, and they were not concerned that the steps, the cladding on the steps destroyed or injured or had any harm to the historic character. And in fact, they said it was consistent with the historic character of the property. The next part that I wanted to go over in terms of it not being precedent setting is that this is in fact a craftsman style. However, it was originally an Italianate style, and the original example of it is Sister House, which is located to the left. We included documentation in our report that is being scanned right now, and it shows images. If you don't mind scanning up in our report, we had images of the two houses side by side. That's a good example. And so this is a mix of craftsman style and Italianate style as it was renovated, raised in the 1920s, sometime in the 1920s. And at that time, that's when the conversion from that Italianate style to a more modern style occurred. Additionally, within, and we included this in our report as well, within HDLC's own guidelines, it states, use of natural materials. It refers to masonry and rustic concrete block. It also refers to California craftsman style and bungalows of the Midwest, which is very common to use a more natural stone in those types of buildings. So we would say that, in our opinion, it is an appropriate use to have that cladding on the stairs, as well as the coloration. The type of the stone that was used is very similar to the brick on the building, and the applicant, the property owner, took very great care to restore the brick along the columns and as well as the first floor area of the building. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and call. There is one public comment. Lily McNee. Do you wish to address the commission? State your name and address for the record.
Lily. I still haven't gotten my voice back from Mardi Gras. So Lily McNee with Weber Consulting. I'm just here in support of the application for the retention of this.
Thank you for being here. Is there any additional public comment on this application? Okay, with that, commissioners, so this is the request of the stone at the stairs. I think we're very clear on the application. Is there any commissioner who wants to tackle this one? Commissioner Bressler.
I just had a question for staff, no, for the staff. This was not on the original agenda that came out, but it was added subsequent to that, because I printed out the one from that originally was posted. It's not on here.
And I also have a previous version that was posted and it is on there.
Not aware of that, and it was definitely on the agenda that went out 24 hours prior to the meeting.
It was on public notice. So our things are auto-generated, and due to the multiple deferrals for the last 3 months, the dates got switched up in our system because our system can get a little wonky.
I'm just uncomfortable considering something that the public may not know about because it wasn't on the agenda.
It was public noticed and it was on the agenda that went out 24 hours prior to the meeting. So although, I mean, and that's legal, correct? That sometimes we do have modifications to the agenda, but we do not do anything that modifies the agenda that wasn't on the public notice and not 24 hours prior to the hearing. So this,
And I did,
unless I'm wrong, this is kosher.
I did download the agenda 24 hours prior and it was on here. So I will just, Commissioner Bressler, for clarification, I'm using my agenda, not the one provided today. And I think this one is this is a more straightforward and not as complicated as some of the other things we've seen today. The applicant sat through. I would like to hear the agenda item if Commissioner
No,
Bressler.
I'm fine with that, but maybe in the future you could call a revised agenda and highlight what's different, just so people can be aware of that.
We'll make a note of that. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So with that, is there any commissioners that want to talk to this case? This is retention for an item that was not previously approved by HDLC, the stone at the steps. Unfortunate that they didn't ask for the request prior to this, so that obviously you didn't have to be here. For those watching, come back to HDLC once you have your C of A and get things revised. It sounds like it was added at some point during the tax credit process if it was approved in a part 3 with the tax credit application, which, just for clarification from the applicant, it was submitted with this material to SHPO.
For clarification, my understanding is that it was not submitted in the original submission, but was submitted in part 3 and was reviewed specifically by both SHPO and NPS.
Okay.
And that's noted in the letter from James Rolfe, the historic tax credit consultant.
Understood. Thank you. Yes, Greg has recused himself. Commissioner Wakeman was looking at me like she might make a motion on this one, actually. This is in the Lower Garden District. I cannot make a motion. But this, I know you're paying attention. I also know you probably prepared before you got here. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, to be honest, my thoughts are the bigness of this deal escapes me. I guess I would like to understand more from the staff why their concrete steps would be preferable. I mean, I heard and I read, the staff report, but, I guess the sticking point of it escapes me.
This is an unusual material to put on an exterior stair in our historic districts. It tends to be something a little bit more suburban. It isn't, I don't disagree that aesthetically, the color and the materiality does lend itself towards the bricks that are on the building. I personally don't necessarily have an opinion aesthetically. It's just the fact that, and I'm not indicating that this was done this way, but we have access to so many materials like at big box hardware stores now that replicate historic materials. I haven't put my hands on this to say whether this is stone or whether it's something that's a printed material that looks like stone. And if this had been presented to us and staff had been able to review it in advance, we might have had a different opinion. We might have been able to make suggestions about how to detail it. But it is atypical. That's why it's before you. It's not something that we could approve at the staff level. We're not making a capital case about it, but it is something that we needed. If this is going to be approved, it needed to be approved at this level.
Commissioner Wakeman, we've seen a handful of these before, and actually many in the LGD, which when Jesse was chair, I remember he would actually sometimes make personal site visits to take a look at these. So I do say this, the material itself is not highly decorative. It is similar in color to the original. So in this instance, if we were to not agree with the staff's recommendation and allow for retention of it, that would probably be the reason I would be willing to move that way. So just as a thought in terms of consideration, again, sometimes when you see them, they're highly decorative, they're black and white tiles, they have more decoration on them and they look nothing like what would have been accepted. But again, with obviously the applicant is here for retention and did not get it pre-approved. So, right. Yeah.
Right. No, and I understand all of that. And I guess another element that concerns me is that SHPO has waved the magic wand, and approved it in essence. My other concern, of course, is to set a precedence that might give us more difficulty. But I guess in the final analysis, the motion that I will make is to approve the retention with the understanding that A, it has received the SHPO approval, and B, it's of a color and apparently of a material that is suitable to the building.
Thank you, Commissioner Wakeman. I appreciate you supporting your recommendation or your motion. Commissioner Love, do you wish a second? Thank you. Do we have any, I'm going to make sure I just called for public comment. Is there any public comment on this application? No public comment. Oh, there is public comment. I didn't have a card. I'm sorry.
I'm Matt Ryan, 1017 U-Turf in the Largarn District. And my only question is, I don't know if y'all were around, none of y'all at the podium were around when the Superdome first opened, but the brick they used was sort of like this tile. And when it rained, it was impossible to walk on. And I think maybe that if there's a texture issue with this, that would be scary if they got wet. And that would be my only concern, why you wouldn't clad steps with tile that were designed for the inside. But that's my only comment.
Thank you for your comment. We do have a motion on the floor in a second. The staff and the applicant, I can see both want to say something. I guess to the two folks that made their motion, I'm just going to allow that, but I don't know. I appreciate the comment. To staff, do you want to?
To his point, if you look at the images, there's anti-slip treads that were installed. I guess that was where the concern is, because it does not have a slip coefficient that we know of that would be appropriate for stairs.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor in a second. Do you wish to amend your motion? Commissioner Wakeman, based on those comments. Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner Love. All right, we're good. All those in favor? All those opposed? Commissioner Green is opposed.
The motion fails to pass.
Okay.
It would be, if the chairman voted, it would be 7-1. We need 8 votes to carry a motion.
I don't have enough votes. Okay, Commissioner Green, well, I guess with that, I'm gonna call. I mean, currently it would be, it's appealable either way, so it's,
I may be wrong here. If you had an alternate motion to defer to where there was, and this was brought up again at next month's hearing where we had a larger body, you might end up with a different vote.
We already voted.
yeah, so there's, you can put another motion on the floor. It failed. So we can put another motion on the floor. The failed most, if we can't reach an agreement, it moves, it goes to council as a failed vote. We prefer not to have that. We prefer to have a vote when we send things. So Commissioner Green, I am interested. Do you have an alternative motion or do you wish to make comments on this?
I think my concern is, as a commission, we don't regulate color. Like that's constantly said to us. And I feel like a lot of the deference that's being given to these tiles that are inappropriate historically is because the color is aesthetically pleasing. And I don't want us to start a precedent of making exceptions, excuse me, based on color, because the color seems to be less offensive than what we really should be worried about is the materials.
We do base recommendations on color of masonry. We don't on paint. So I understand your concern, but to play the devil's advocate, if this had been before us to review, we probably would have, the staff would have reviewed the color and texture of the masonry proposed.
And I understand the texture for sure. And that to me is something that I just feel that the reason we're letting these materials pass, or the reason it's being suggested they pass, is because of the color, not because we found the material to be appropriate historically and for this building.
This material, I will say, is more substantial than some of the other cases we've heard on this commission with porcelain tile and other things. And I should have substantiated my thing. I do think that the material and the color on this are very similar. While it is not, obviously the staff did not have the chance to review it. It is not, I have seen this in the past for cases that are both material and color is far outside of this. We have approved retention. And so that is my, that's the way I've looked at this in terms of retention. I also realize it is, there's quite a bit of work that's also required in terms of removing this and or replacing it at this point. And SHPO's piece to me is support of this. But if I don't want to call another vote, if you do not feel like you will move your vote, and I know you don't move your vote very often, which is why we love having you on this commission too. And you're very thoughtful in terms of how you analyze these things. So.
Well, so I would also say the staff was recommending that we deny the retention. Are you now going back on that recommendation?
I was just making a point about process because we have a bare quorum this hearing, whereas at the next hearing, hopefully we will have many more commissioners here and it would be a different vote. I'm only speaking of process.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood the staff's recommendation had not changed.
Okay. All right. So with that,
Could I make
Yes.
another motion?
Absolutely, Commissioner Wakeman.
Could I move that we defer this for 30 days?
Yes. And Commissioner King will second that motion. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. You need me?
It would be 1, 2, 3. It would include you voting.
I'll vote with the majority. And we will see you at next month's meeting. Thank you. Okay. Commissioner Hackenberg, you can come back. You'll get to go hide again next month. New business retention applications. Item A, 801 Patterson. This application has been withdrawn. Item B, 1232-1234 Louisa Street. Is the applicant present?
Yes, James Chauvin, architect, 1795 West Causeway Approach.
Thank you. Staff?
This is an application for retention of inappropriate windows at front and side elevations
inappropriate door at side entry and front gallery column detailing at a non-contributing rated two-story, two-family residential building in deviation of a C of A and full control by water. Since we're pressed for time, I will abbreviate this. So the new construction at 1234 Louisa Street was the infill new construction building in the Bywater district. Following a final inspection, there were several items in deviation from the approved drawings. However, a number of these items have been remediated by working at the staff level, including different things from the front gallery balustrade to the front facing gable vent to different types of roofing. The applicant is asking the commission to allow for retention of inappropriate windows at the front and side elevations, as well as an incorrect side entry door header height, as well as, in addition, to front column detailing at the front gallery. So the side elevation windows that were installed were flush mounted vinyl windows with grills in between the glass, which we do not allow. Of those, there are 10 total that are pretty visually prominent from the public right of way, that being 4 on the right side elevation and 6 at the left side elevation. And of those 6 at the right side elevation, 4 really are the more prominent and visible ones. Staff recommends that 8 of the inappropriate windows, those being 4 on each side, be replaced with an HDLC approved vinyl window. In addition to the side elevation windows, there are 2 front facade windows that were installed incorrectly. So usually we don't allow in between size window at the front elevation. It either needs to be a standard size window at the front elevation or full height. Full height windows were what was approved and drawn on the plans, but instead the header heights align with the doors here, but the sills are about 1 or 2 feet from hitting the ground. So it's like an in-between size. Staff cannot really recommend approval of the inappropriately sized windows, but leaves that decision to the discretion of the commission. In addition, the approved drawings show a recessed entry door at the right side elevation, matching the header heights of the windows at the side elevations as well as the front elevations. Staff recommends that the header height of the door be readjusted to match other existing header heights. And then lastly, the approved front gallery column detail includes a simplistic capital and trim as seen in the drawing below. Staff recommends denial of retention of the existing capitals and that they be removed and the existing trim below be added, molding be added to what is already existing. And that is it. And I would also like to say that I think that this can, the front column gallery, at the front gallery, that can be done at the staff level. It might not require everything.
Okay, thank you. To the applicant, you have 2 minutes. Do you wish to address the commission?
In reference to the columns, we are, of course, willing to go ahead and get those modified to comply with the drawings as submitted. However, on the windows, primarily we're asking for your permission to keep those or retain those. Primarily, a lot of it had to do with the time frame in which it was constructed and getting materials to meet those requirements. And at this point, we're asking for retention of those.
Okay, thank you. Just to note to the commissioners, and to reiterate what was in the staff report, we saw this project in November 2022. This project proceeded without any permits or HDLC C of A. And so we've heard this and allowed for retention of the new construction without permits, given that they would work with the staff for the review of this project. This is my district. I cannot make a motion. I really appreciate the applicant being willing to work with the staff. The windows, though, are highly visible and do not seem like something we could allow for retention of. And so on this item, I guess, so we've got 4 items here. The 4th item is the front gallery column detailing at the top, which I believe is a moisture issue, just given you have a space for water to sit. Which is one of the reasons, many reasons why the staff is not allowing that, but it sounds like the applicant is willing to adjust that. So we will go ahead and deny if I could make a motion, I would make a motion to deny retention of that item. The side entry door to readjust the header height of the door to match the other openings. It seems like this is something, again, given the applicant did not have a permit and or give HDLC an opportunity in a full control district to review any of this. It seems like something that we could deny retention of and have the owner rework. The front facade windows, this is the discretion of the commission, but my hesitancy on this is both the top of the window is a little unusual, as well as it doesn't actually hit the floor. And then we get lots of applicants who say, hey, well, my neighbor across the street had it. Why can't I? And then they go build without a permit and then ask for forgiveness. It seems like we need to have that corrected to meet the drawings that were submitted. So that item, I would deny retention of the front facade windows, and then same goes for the side elevation windows, given they're highly visible. I cannot make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we deny all of the retention items and go by the staff's recommendation for each of the retention items for the replacement.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. I'm first. Is there a second to that motion? Is there any additional public comments on Commissioner Wakeman seconded too, and Commissioner Bruno? So many seconds. Is there any public comment on this application? No public comment. Any additional comment between commissioners? Okay. All
Just
those,
work with the staff this time. I guess.
absolutely. Just please. How many times? Yes, work with the staff, get a permit. All those in favor? All those opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Your application has been denied by HDLC Commission. You have 10 calendar days from the date of this meeting to appeal to City Council in writing. The staff will furnish you with the details of this appeals project. Good luck with your project. Get a permit, please. Thank you. On moving forward. All right, moving on. Item C, 3000 South Carrollton Avenue, 8113 Fig Street. Is the applicant present? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Catherine Harmon, LK Harmon Architects, 6238 Argonne.
Thank you.
This is an application for the retention of the construction of a canopy, painting previously unpainted brick, and installation of painted signage at a contributing rated one-story commercial building without a C of A on Carrollton Avenue. At the September 20th ARC meeting, the ARC recommended conceptual approval of the canopy structure on the right side of the building with further recommendations. As such, staff recommends that the retention of the canopy be granted with ARC comments. Per the HDLC guidelines, the HDLC does not approve the painting of unpainted historic brick or masonry, as it can cause damage to the masonry and alter the character of the building. However, as the other three walls of the building had already been painted and removing the paint could cause more damage to the masonry, staff recommends that the retention be granted. As the signage is painted on the previously unpainted masonry, but otherwise meets the guidelines, staff recommends that the retention be granted, provided that they get approval with zoning.
Thank you. This is in Carrollton District, partial control. To the applicant, do you wish to address the commission?
Full control.
Full control. Thank you. Oh, on Carrollton, I'm sorry. Thank you.
We'd just like to say that we agree with the staff comments and also that the faux vegetation has been removed. And you'll see in our drawings, we are complying with everything that y'all recommended in the previous meeting several months ago in 2022.
Thank you.
And the owner is also here.
Thank you. And thank you for working with the staff to correct the retention. Commissioner Bressler.
Did the gentleman have anything to say, or?
Johnny Blanchard, 3000 South Carrollton, Yale College, and I just thank you to the commission. We're looking to fully comply.
So again, there's some specifics that you have to go back to, and with the zoning and with the
correct
architectural review committee and all that. You're well aware of that. Okay.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Good. Well, certainly this the change in the look of the building did not change the food preparation, so that's still pretty good there. But I'll move that we accept the staff recommendations, but again, there are particulars, so be careful about that because we don't want to see you back here again.
Correct.
Thank you. And in the future, please get permits in advance so you're not on the retention portion of our docket. Wait, so we have a motion on the floor. I need to ask, is there any public comment on this application? No public comment. Commissioner King seconds. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And get a permit next time prior to retention applications. Thank you. All right. Okay, item D is 841 Test Street. This item was withdrawn. Item E is 1221 St. Mary Street, 1201 St. Mary Street. Is the applicant present? Given that the applicant is present, and this one has a number of items on it, and we are close to 5 PM with no air conditioning in this meeting, I think we need a motion for deferral.
To defer.
Second.
Commissioner Bressler makes a motion to defer. Commissioner King defers or seconds that. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item F is 1317 Ursuline Avenue. This item has been withdrawn. Item G, 727 First Street. Is the applicant present? Hi, please step forward and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Rebecca Lind. I'm here on behalf of South Coast Solar. Our owner has COVID in his home, 2605 Ridge Lake Drive.
Thank you for being here to represent the owner. The staff will make the report and we'll hear your comments following.
This is an application for retention of inappropriate solar panels installed at a non-contributing two-story single-family residential building in deviation of the C of A and the Irish Channel. The approved drawings show the panels set back 10 feet from the front wall of the house, with a note that the last two panels be removed as they did not meet the guidelines for a rectangular and contiguous arrangement. Upon inspection, it was found that the panels were installed closer than 10 feet to the front wall, and the last two panels were installed in deviation of the approved drawings. As the solar panels do not meet the guidelines and were installed in deviation of the C of A and approved drawings, staff recommends denial as installed.
So the applicant, do you wish to address the commission? You have 2 minutes.
Sure. It was a mistake on our part. We did have a permit. I am listening to the other people. We did have a permit. Our installers unfortunately used the original stamp plans as opposed to the updated HDLC. They made a mistake. When we talked to the owner and talked to neighbors, they didn't notice that solar had been installed. It's a 2-story and therefore is not highly visible unless you drive down the street. Look at it like this.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I'm going to see, is there any public comment on this application? Commissioner Hackenberg?
Yeah, they're highly visible. I mean, I agree with the staff's position that they should be set back to the approved location. That'll be my motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Hackenberg.
Attention.
Is there a second to that motion? Commissioner Love? Is there any further comment between commissioners on that motion? Okay, thank you. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries. Your application's been denied by HDLC. You have 10 calendar days from the date of this meeting to appeal to City Council in writing. The staff will furnish you with the details of this appeals process. All right, moving on. All right, we're so close, everyone. We got this. Item H, 639 Desire Street. Is the applicant present? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Graham Holly, 631 Desire Street.
Thank you. To the staff, can we keep this one brief and the next few as well?
We can try. This is an application for retention of wall demolition at a contributing rated 1-story single-family residential building in deviation of a C of A in full control by water. Yeah, so in August 2022, a C of A was issued for the structural renovation and installation of additional dormers at the building. It's also proceeding through the tax credit program. So in February 2023, a stop work order was placed at the property for wall demolition exceeding the approved scope of work, which you can see in the approved documents at the bottom of the PSR. The excessive demolition was noticed by HDLC inspector and was not self-reported. The drawings indicate just selective wall demolition for new openings at the main residential building. The inspection revealed that significant wall demolition had taken place, which far exceeded the scope. And although the total percentage of the wall removal is unclear, it's apparent that the restructured wall area exceeds the 50% of the existing, which with nearly all of the existing structure at the accessory building was removed as well. So it's a two-part. There were wall removal at the main building as well as the accessory building at the rear of the structure, the main structure. Following extensive conversations with the architect, it was noted that both buildings had extensive termite damage and wood rot, which prompted the removal of unsalvageable materials. On-site documentation, which is included below, also shows the extent of the damage and let's see. The drawing that was included below indicates the area of the 4x4 studs at the main building that were removed versus those that remain in place. In general, the HDLC reviews wall demolitions as all portions of the existing wall structure, and it is clear that areas of the existing wall structure at the main building were not original to the building in some ways and were substandard with some termite damage. Wall demolition at the accessory building was much more extensive in terms of what was the existing material that was removed. The architect noted that wall demolition proceeded because it became apparent that the existing wall structure could not support the new openings of the building and required removal. Pictures of this wall structure at the accessory building show a mixture of historic and non-historic, more modern material and many non-original openings. Several similar cases of excessive wall demolition have come before the HDLC Commission recently. It is apparent that termite-eaten and rotted wood cannot support buildings receiving significant structural renovations without sistering or potentially other work. However, when demolition work is completed without the guidance of HDLC staff, historic material is lost. The provided documentation does show a combination of damaged wall structure and non-historic material at both buildings. Overall, the realized work far exceeded the demolition that was approved. Staff recommends retention of the wall demolition, and staff believes that at the discretion of the commission is a fine is appropriate for this situation.
And let me add, we met with the architect, Mr. Holly, and they were able to explain to us, there's sort of and Mr. Holly can further explain this, when they began to remove the portions that were approved and remove the window openings, they discovered that there was a substandard building material, basically 2x2s that were within the wall that would not have been able to support the windows. So it sort of began to snowball when they realized what they did not realize was in the wall is sort of a very unpredictable and unusual type of building material. So
Thank you for that clarification. To Mr. Hawley, do you wish to address the commission?
We're just grateful to the staff for working with us and educating us on the error of just the matter of when we can and when we can't demolish walls. So, I mean, I have more I could add here. I know we're tight, so we'd just be grateful if you took the recommendation of the staff.
Thank you. This is in my district. I'm very familiar with this building as well. I would just suggest, I mean, again, I realize you're close by to this project as well. Your father is also probably the architect or was maybe on this one. I would just note, like, again, you're here on retention, not for letting us know about this and that the inspector caught it, and you've seen all the other applications we have. So I'm grateful on this one that it is retention, that the staff can recommend retention on it, the demolition that's taken place. But there is also a note in here about a fine, and the fine is at the leisure of the commission. My concern, again, hearing one of the docketed items earlier today, where this was a similar conversation about removing and how much to remove and when to notify. I think it's really important this project is in a full control district. And as such, the applicant does need to work with the staff and continue to come back to modify when unforeseen circumstances are found, not because the inspector has found them. So with that, I would recommend a modest fine on this one. Again, just not setting precedent that this is okay to proceed this route.
What is the fine limit on this?
Yeah, so the 2023 building assessor's website, the building itself is assessed for $270,900. So the fine range would be $1,000 to $40,635. which would be 15%.
Yeah, on this one, I think again, just a modest fine that's acknowledgement, 2,500, I think is, given the percentage of demolition that you can see from the street, I think that is reasonable, and given that it could go up to 40. 25 if I was able to make a motion, 2,500. But I'll leave that at the commission to discuss. I can't make a motion. Do you want to make a motion?
I'll make that motion. With the fine at $2,500.
So a motion to allow for retention of the demolition and a modest fine at $2,500.
Please.
Do we have a second to that? Commissioner Wakeman, is there any further discussion amongst commissioners on that motion? We are at a bare quorum today, so I just want to make sure let's discuss and vote once if anyone feels differently. Okay. Any public comment on this application? No public comment. All those in favor? All those opposed, the motion carries. Thank you. Your application has been allowed for retention, but you did receive a fine. So you have 10 calendar days from the date of this meeting to appeal to city council in writing, and the staff will furnish you with the details of the appeals process. We are so excited to see this project and this building being renovated. I don't know what you're doing in here, but it's going to be amazing, I'm sure. Please just move forward, work with the staff.
We will. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, thanks. Item I, 2123 Soniat Street. This application has been withdrawn. Item J, 1436 Harmony Street. Is the applicant present? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Edie Pitt, 500 Walnut Street. Hello.
Thank you.
This is an application for the retention of partial roof demolition at a contributing rated one-story rear accessory building without a C of A in partial controlled garden district. While the existing rear accessory building is only partially visible from the street, it's likely considered a contributing rated structure, and a substantial amount of its original historic roof fabric was removed and the roof form was altered. However, staff would likely have recommended no objection to the request had it been reviewed in advance. Based on this, staff recommends the commission vote to approve the retention request and recommends the commission vote to levy a minimal fine for this unpermitted demolition. Because the work was completed prior to August 1st, 2022, it's subject to the previous fine structure of $1,000 to $10,000 maximum.
Thank you. The applicant, do you wish to address the commission?
No. I agree with Dennis. It was very helpful. I regret I did not have a permit. There was a Hurricane Zeta was the problem, and the roof blew off during Zeta, and the next day I replaced it. And was told when I called permitting that because it was storm related, hurricane related, a permit was not required, and I was able to then mitigate the damage and do what I had to do to accomplish that. So.
Thank you. So I also have a comment card from you, but I'm just acknowledging that I have this, but it's the applicant.
I am for.
Yeah, great. I have, I do have one other speaker that has put in a speaker card.
Okay.
I'm going to call first any additional public comment besides the speaker card I have. This is it. Okay. All right.
Susan Johnson, 2822 LePage Street. I am not paid to be here. Please exact the maximum fine. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Commissioners, this is in the Garden District. Partial control. I'm looking down here because y'all are chatty. I love it. That means you get to make a motion.
Sorry, that I live on the street. This
Great.
is
Oh,
across
good.
the street
Yay.
from me. So
Excellent.
I didn't remember there being any hurricane damage from Zeta. I know I mean, my car appears in a lot of the photos. I know there has been some concern about this property unrelated to HDLC when they installed a driveway, and that kind of stuff. And some of our other neighbors were up in arms about the drainage issues. But yeah, like that's why we were chatting. Like I said,
thank you. That's great.
This is my neighborhood.
It's always weird when your car and like some of you see people, you know, in the photos sometimes. So to the applicant, I guess there's no real specific questions on this one. I guess since you're so close to this one, would you like to make a motion, Commissioner Green?
I can, obviously, like I would agree with the staff to approve the retention request. I'm curious as to who told the applicant that because it was hurricane related, you didn't need to go through the HDLC? Because this is definitely in a HDLC neighborhood.
Zeta came through on the 29th. The next business day, I called permitting and said, I tried to go in one stop to fast track getting a permit. I was told over the phone, it's not necessary if it's storm related. There is a tree that did fall partially on my roof and completely on my neighbor's roof. The original roof was red corrugated sheet metal. When the branch fell on it, it caused the 4x8 piece of sheet metal to bend. We were so in a hurry to protect the integrity of the guest house that my contractor immediately went to Lowe's and could not get the matching sheet metal, which is on the lower portion, because that was a special order item 10 years ago, which is why we came back with the seal tab. I am unhappy with the two different roof materials, and I am happy to remedy that either by going with the seal tab on the lower portion that is the red sheet metal, or vice versa. So that's that, I was told I did not get a name. It was a very chaotic time. And I had occupants living in that particular rental. So I was very motivated to get the roof protected.
Could I add something?
Mhm.
It's not clear whether the scope of work presented to safety and permits at that time was for the replacement of like the red roofing material, or if it was for the scope to install the new second floor addition on this building. Had they explained that to safety and permits, they likely would have required drawings for the work. And at that point, we would have reviewed those drawings for the partial roof demolition. But an application was never submitted for this work, which isn't just roof replacement. It was an addition to the rear accessory roof.
Has this work been reviewed by zoning and other, just in terms of height maximum? Because that's usually what is also reviewed in terms of getting a second floor and accessory building.
I have two buildings that abut mine that I have provided pictures to Dennis that are 3 stories high. So mine is dwarfed in the middle.
Again, the city reviews with the current codes, what's allowed. Not just the adjacent neighboring buildings. Commissioner Bressler.
I had an interesting thought. It seems like the applicant might be suggesting, instead of finding the project, is that she would take some of that money and use it to
Remedy the
remedy the
roof match.
situation, which maybe that's a different approach. No, I understand that, but I mean, it's two different concepts. One is to assess a fine, or two is to, not have them retain, or to have them make other changes to make it
One
look
is,
better.
yeah, but you can't think about fines. I mean, okay, so if you have a project that comes in with a $1,000 to $100,000 fine, and they say, hey, I'm gonna take $80,000 to $90,000 and reinvest it in my property to fix it. I mean, that's not how this commission is reviewing demolitions and fines. I'm just as again, we don't want to set a precedent for how we're also reviewing fines. Commissioner Green.
So I would again say that I would support the staff recommendation that they can retain, give the retention request, approve the retention request, excuse me. And I would suggest that we have a $3,500 fine.
Okay, do we have a second to that motion? Commissioner King seconds. Any further discussion from commissioners? All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Your retention has been granted with a fine of $3,500. You have 10 calendar days from the date of this meeting to appeal to city council in writing. The staff will furnish you with the details of this appeal.
Thank you. I appreciate all of your help.
Thank you. All right, item K, who is the last lucky person? I'm so sorry. This is what happens. This is why you want to get a permit and not be on this agenda. 2604 Charter Street. Please step forward and state your name and address for the record.
Christy Bagley, 2604 Charter Street.
Thank you.
This is an application to retain the installation of 4 inappropriate new craftsman style entry doors at a non-contributing rated 2-story multifamily residential building without a C of A and full control Marini. While the doors installed appear to be constructed of wood, the glazed multi-light portion does not utilize an appropriate muntin grid. For example, the divided light grid is not simulated divided light and only has an interior and exterior muntin and appears to have no spacer bar between the glass. These muntins are also 1.5 inches thick, where an approvable historic wood door window dimension would be closer to a maximum of 7/8 of an inch. Additionally, the overall building is not craftsman in design or detailing, and installing an inconsistent door style may cause confusion about the period style of the building and whether or not it's historic. However, the applicant has confirmed they would like to request the retention of these 4 doors to remain as installed. Based on the amount of varied design changes that are being implemented on the building exterior, staff cannot support the installation of an inappropriate door style with inappropriate detailing. However, based on the non-contributing rating of the building, staff has no objection and leaves the decision to the discretion of the commission. Sorry.
Thank you. The applicant, do you wish to address the commission?
I think the only thing that I would like to say is that when we were replacing the doors, the owner and I kind of went around the neighborhood to see what was already existing and kind of get an idea because we couldn't really figure out what to do. I know it doesn't matter, but whatever he wants us to do, we'll do.
No, doesn't work like that.
Right.
So you have purchased and are renovating a building in Faubourg-Marigny, which is a full control district. As such, you need to get permits for all the work on this property.
She's learning.
Do you have a permit for any of the exterior work going on this project?
Yes.
Okay, and it hasn't been reviewed by ARC?
At this point, it doesn't look like it'll need ARC review.
Okay.
Most of the work that you can see is going to be either changed or is approval at staff level, like the trellis is going to be removed, the handrails.
Great. That was my specific question. It's starting to stick out as a project that does not fit in a full control historic district and did not seem like it had review. Okay. Great. This is in, I'm sorry. And did you want to address any other concerns?
No.
Okay. Just to the public, to anyone watching, to you, to your client, do not walk around the neighborhood and make decisions on what to put in on the exterior of the building.
We're learning.
Okay, great. Thank you. The,
City does not regulate murals.
yes, I was about to say, I'll let y'all
Please move on.
answer. Yep. Okay, with that, this is in Commissioner Wakeman's district. Is there any public comment on this application? No public comment. Commissioner Wakeman?
I'm glad to see that you're working with the staff. I walked past this building and was taken a little aback. So I guess without a staff recommendation and given your willingness to work with the staff and removing that trellis, I'm inclined to recommend approval of retention of the doors.
Thank you.
Do we have Commissioner Wakeman? I would just ask. So I don't want to reward folks for putting up ugly things and then, or non-compliant things and then taking them down. Forgive my, it's not, but just non-compliant items and then removing them as part of that. Could it be maybe that they're less visible from the street, those doors as a support item?
That was the very next thing I was going to say.
Great.
Was given the recessed nature of the doors and their lack of visibility from the street would be another reason.
Thank you. Okay, great. With that, do we have a second on that motion? Commissioner Hackenberg seconds. Is there any additional comment? All those in favor? All those opposed, the motion carries. You've been allowed to retain these items. Please, you and the owner of the building work with the staff moving forward and always on any other project in HDLC's district and across the city. All right, with that, we have completed the agenda. To everyone, it is incredibly hot in here. And there's we've had a lot. So yeah, we have ratification of Architectural Review Committee and staff action since February 1st, 2023 meeting. All the motion from
So moved.
Commissioner Hackenberg, second
Approved.
by Commissioner Green. HDLC reports and communication. No reports and communication. Thank you and meeting adjourned. We'll see you at the next meeting. And thank you again for getting the mics fixed.